Out of the gates and ready to go. A big college football and NFL recap over the next 3 hours. OutKick 360 from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. The crew is all here with a lot to discuss. Big matchups coming up this weekend across the college slate. 6 top 25 matchups. We'll get to that and recap the big highlights from Saturday's action. Plenty of NFL thoughts as well. Matt Rhule fired today. Head coach of the Carolina Panthers, no more. Steve Wilks is the interim after yesterday's 37-15 loss to San Francisco, sent the Panthers to 1-4 overall. PK's back from the nation's capital. Chad is celebrating the Tennessee Volunteers, who will host the number 3 ranked Alabama Crimson Tide, a battle of unbeatens this Saturday afternoon in Knoxville. Gentlemen, good afternoon.
Matt Rhule will make $42 million to walk away, to be fired by Carolina. 7-year deal. His owner, David Tepper, said before the season it takes 6 or 7 years to build a foundation for an NFL team. And they fire him this quickly. I don't dispute the results and why they fired him. It's good to be a head coach from a pay standpoint.
It does take 6 or 7 years for some teams, but you need to see them on the right track. Quicker than that. And look, you see more sooner. Look at what the New York Giants are doing right now. Brian Daboll very quickly showing you what a good coach can do with a roster that's not that different than Joe Judge had a year before. If I'm Tepper, I'm looking at that and thinking, look, the conclusion is in on my guy, and I'll go spend big money on the next one. And one thing about the super rich owning virtually every team in the NFL is you can afford to make these mistakes, just like oil baron boosters can in college.
You know what's weird to me, though, about that is what I kept thinking about when I see that $42 million figure that they're paying in a buyout. My first thought is, oh, they're all billionaires, and this is a billion-dollar industry, not a huge deal. But what happened with the fallout of that construction plan for the new facility in South Carolina that fell through? I think it was in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Was that just a civics issue? I was led to believe they started construction.
They did.
And there were financial issues around the construction of that project.
He got into a fight with Rock
Financial
Hill,
issues
basically.
on who was paying for what.
Okay.
Not over David Tepper's billions.
But
that played a factor in why they pulled out of that deal. But they left. I mean, it looks like a scrapyard now from what they left.
Isn't it funny, though? And again, I'm not David Tepper's attorney or accountant. But isn't it funny that they have no problem forking over $843,000 a month for the next 4 years to a coach. But yet when asked to spend on a building they're going to own, they won't do it. A plan falls apart because they can't come to an agreement with some small town in South Carolina to build it. But yet I'll pay my failed coach $42 million instead.
In each case, I think he thinks he's taking some principled stand. And these guys wind up being stubborn.
The main difference, Rhule has offset language in his contract. College coaches do not. Jimbo Fisher does not. Meaning, if he is fired from A&M and he takes another job, A&M still owes him the $90 million plus buyout. Rhule, if he takes another job, that will come out of, or they'll subtract that out of whatever is owed monthly from Carolina. In this case. And it was a college-like contract to get him to jump to the NFL at the time. That's what it took. It was that and command over his coaching staff. And Joe Brady took the fall last year. Matt Rhule took the fall this year because the next quarterback in line has been bad. Maybe he could have saved himself some time, and I lobby for this all the time. You can save yourself a couple of games if you start the other quarterback, and then you make the change to Baker Mayfield instead of rushing it. If Tomlin were any trouble, and he's not, you start the rookie later when you need to go on a run and provide a spark. Rhule didn't have that, and they've had a healthy Christian McCaffrey for the most part, and he's been okay. He's been playing well if you look at his numbers and his impact. Okay. But their defense is a sieve. They make a ton of errors, and their quarterback has been atrocious.
That offset language makes me curious, and I don't know that we've seen too many examples of a super expensive NFL coach with offset language going to college as a prize.
Yeah.
At least not recently. But I'm curious now, if he goes to Wisconsin or Nebraska or wherever,
Auburn.
how much of a discount do they get because he's making that much money? Or how does the financing work?
No discount, because there's going to be multiple programs that want him.
Well, the point is, though,
he's getting that money anyway, so to speak.
What Matt Rhule could say is,
let's structure it this way.
I would rather penalize the Panthers and make that money. You pay me $1 million a year, and we will have the highest paid coaching staff in America for college. He could very easily do that.
And arrange the buyout and those kind of things.
Butch Jones got fired from Tennessee and went and became a $28,000 a year analyst at Alabama for like 3 or 4 years because he was getting head coach money from Tennessee. In a way to kind of stick it to Tennessee, and because he didn't have the head coaching offer he wanted. Matt Rhule, the difference is he's going to get a good head coaching offer. But you could absolutely provide a hometown discount for one of these jobs and say, now, the money you're saving and what you would be paying me, because the Panthers are paying the leftover part of that salary, I want to go hire whoever I want.
Florida staff.
And I want these things done, facilities, whatever else, this kind of commitment. You bring up a good point, Paul. It would be smart of Matt Rhule if he wanted to go right back into college coaching to do that. I could also see Matt Rhule saying, I'm going to take a year off. I'm going to tour other programs and NFL jobs and maybe do a little bit of TV, but make the full salary, the full buyout for a year, and then reevaluate a year from now.
Though there's some interesting jobs open, and
Exactly.
it's maybe a better market this year.
It's a big risk, because are you going to have Wisconsin, Nebraska, Auburn possibly bidding? At least 2 of them, you would think, bidding for you.
Yeah, and now, I mean, and either way, Tepper's fine with it. That's the thing, is we knew this was coming. We had last week, we were discussing the job security for coaches, and we said he's a dead man walking. And that was with the offset language and all that included in what was guaranteed on his contract. I think this has been the worst kept secret because of how bad things have been. When they allow more than 17 points, he is 1-27 in his time in Carolina. 1-27 is his record when they allow more than 17 points in a game. It's terrible. And he was, signed on. It was supposed to be some great revamp of their offense, the college style. And where they started, to be fair to him, their plan started on defense. They had that draft, but 3 years ago, every single pick was on defense. And their defense has been good. I mean, there have been times where you look around going, man, this seems to be falling apart. But overall, I mean, their defense does its part, and then they get no quarterback play. From Sam Darnold, who he signed off on, to, but prior to that, Teddy Bridgewater, and then Baker Mayfield, where for whatever reason, they don't make the move until right before the season. And no matter what quarterback's coming in there, it's tough to just throw a quarterback into the mix and say, okay, get ready for the season with your new teammates and learn the terminology. It's a lot more difficult than that, and he didn't have much of a shot this year, I'm saying.
Yeah, and did not have – Matt Corral gets hurt before the season. So, we talked about sort of the safety net of having a rookie quarterback to go to. Not that Matt Corral, as a non-first-round pick, would have been that guy.
No, they could have said, here we go with the new –
hey, this week against the 49ers, Baker Mayfield's been abysmal. We're going to give the rookie a chance. He's got some moxie. And then maybe he goes out there and surprises you. Then you could come back and say, hey, we feel like we've got a pretty good quarterback that we can groom to be the franchise guy. You don't even have that now in Carolina. So it's easy to see why they made that decision.
But he wins in college. Like, he will be a hot commodity now. And he already was. He was already getting mentioned there. Chad, I'm sure you saw this and thought, where does Nebraska sit on this list?
Yeah, and Auburn. I think the one that people started immediately saying was, if I'm Auburn needs – Auburn, Nebraska also. This is the difference with the jobs. Auburn and Nebraska are 2 really good, tradition-rich jobs that need a program builder from the ground up. Like, they are broken. They need a start. So Matt Rhule would be a guy that could come in and build your program. That's what he's done at Temple. Yeah. That's what he did at Baylor. They started from rock bottom at Baylor when he took over, and he quickly got them competitive and then got them really good. So that's perfect for Auburn or Nebraska. I look at Wisconsin and think, this is not a broken program. I mean, maybe Jim Leonard, by the way, who had a really good debut as the interim coach. Maybe Jim Leonard, keep it in the family and just promote him as the head coach is the right option at Wisconsin.
Yeah, they looked really good this past weekend. Steve Wilkes is the interim head coach now in Carolina. He has spent plenty of time there. He was a part of that staff from like 2012 to 2017. Then he had the 1-year stint in Arizona as the head coach. And he's been like the pass game defensive coordinator this year. So they've been splitting that up, but they've named him the interim.
And he's part of a lawsuit against the league.
Yeah,
that's right.
And now he gets a chance to turn things around as best he can to possibly, if it doesn't end up here, him getting the job with Carolina, to possibly end up getting some interviews down the road because of this, depending on how his team plays.
I think it's a team that'll wind up being blown up, and Tepper, with that money, thought he was getting himself a big, flashy coach with this hire. I expect he'll go out and make another one. Same kind of deal, not necessarily a college guy, but a name.
It is interesting, though. I was thinking about the move. Like, Tepper also continued to discuss how he wanted the franchise QB, right? Like, they brought Cam back for half a season or whatever it was. But they never really invested in the franchise quarterback.
I realized to get in on Deshaun, right?
Yeah, they did. They did try to do that. They did make the trade for Sam Darnold, and they
Teddy Bridgewater. They tried the stopgap.
They just couldn't get in on. There was nobody big to get in on.
But there were.
They couldn't get in on.
The only two that they talked about or that was reported was Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers at the time.
See,
did they want in on Russell Wilson?
Well,
like, I'm trying to see.
I think the thing was that Russell Wilson, he declined the opportunity for Cleveland earlier. So the problem they were in is that these good quarterbacks who maybe were moving weren't interested in moving to bad teams. Weren't interested in moving to bad teams that were going to have to give up their draft capital to get good in order to acquire them. So if Russell Wilson comes to Carolina and they've got to give up 2 firsts and 2 seconds to get him, he's coming to a wasteland of a team that's given up the draft capital that would make them good, and it's an unattractive team for those reasons.
They shouldn't be that bad, though. The problem has been quarterback.
Yep.
They've got Christian McCaffrey. They have DJ Moore, who they're probably trying to trade now. Robbie Anderson at wide receiver. I look at their offense and I think they need some pieces on the offensive line, yes. But they're also been really bad at QB and not able to get anything consistently going. Defensively, they've invested in young talent so they can invest their money on the opposite side. And for whatever reason, they never truly threw the checkbook at anyone. And maybe that's to their credit. They didn't go after Carson Wentz. Washington did. Right? Like, there are other examples of where it hasn't worked out. But Carolina, they didn't jump to the top of they had their option. They could have had Kenny Pickett, chose not to this past year.
Could have chased Matt Ryan probably wasn't coming in division.
Yeah, fair. But again, like the only two we heard about, Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers wasn't leaving unless you were giving him $50 million plus and something for Green Bay.
Right, nobody got him.
Yeah. So that's the only argument I can make for Matt Rhule is the owner continued to talk about investing in quarterback, and he was left with Baker Mayfield in July.
They should. I don't think coaches tank. Steve Wilkes isn't going to tank, but it would be best for them if they were at the top of the
they
draft
need a
board.
top 3 pick to draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And a coach that can develop him now.
Can you imagine, though, if Steve Wilkes, a part of the Brian Flores lawsuit, then claimed later that he was also asked to tank this year?
That's a good thought.
Adding on to it, like, you better be careful about the meetings you have around me if you want to imply that we're not out here trying to win and I don't have a chance at this job long term, because these are all going straight to my attorney. I will forward these meetings and record them straight to my attorney.
I'm taking meticulous notes.
Yes.
Paul, how was D.C.? How was Washington?
These trips are so in and out now. I got there to the hotel at 10:30 on Saturday night, and my flight this morning was 6:55. So
it's an early trip to the airport.
Yeah, FedEx Field is not a lovely place, as you know. The press box, though, press boxes in a lot of the stadiums of this era are poorly located in that they're in a corner. I didn't remember that it was as low as it is. So it's really better than many of them, and particularly if the team that you're watching is driving towards you.
Was that right in front of you, the final play?
It's not that bad. Yeah, it's coming right at us that last series. So
Carson Wentz
wasn't that bad.
Carson
Boy, those
Wentz
were
does it
3
again.
terrible plays. I mean, start with the first down play is a throwaway that Christian Fulton almost picks in the back of the end zone because he did such a bad job of throwing it away. But very uninventive, uncreative plays there. But, I mean, it says something about the Titans, too, that the Commanders are in that game and in position to win it. 4 tries to win it. They only got 3 of them because David Long made a nice interception there. But much more of a nail-biter than it should be based on the talent levels of those 2 teams.
What was your drive like from Georgetown to Landover, Maryland? Because I was there for an Army-Navy game, and I just remember, I feel like I passed Nationals Park at one point, and you're in the city, and then 10 minutes later, the stadium's there. But I don't remember anything. It's like I hit a time warp where the space-time continuum didn't work for the stretch between D.C. to Landover, Maryland.
Well, it's interesting because I had such a bad experience in Buffalo because my Uber driver, as you remember, I did some of the show from the car, and we approached it from the wrong side, which was a nightmare. So I made sure to approach this from the correct side. It said you have to be on such and such a street, which was from the south. Well, the directions all wanted to take me from the north. Even to get to this street, it was like, well, yeah, just go to the north of the stadium and then drive south to get to this street. And I was like, I'm not falling for that. So I took a very seemingly obscure path to make sure I got to this street, even though I knew the traffic was going to be nothing like Buffalo. So that took me like 35, 40 minutes because I was on kind of outskirt streets hitting a lot of lights. On the way back, it was no big deal. It was just like 30 minutes. I did drive by RFK Stadium on the way there, which most of these stadiums tend to get knocked down. That stadium looks like
I didn't know it still existed.
Sitting there, rusting, fenced off.
I thought a soccer team played there.
No, I think they have their own field. Do they play there?
Yeah, I think a soccer team played there.
He said it's called Audi Field.
Looks like it's in bad shape.
We all turned to Colin, our soccer expert, when
last
I said
time
that.
Last time I was there, a soccer team was playing there.
Are they building something? Do they have something in process? They're in the new stadium for 2 years. Okay, so RFK is empty. Yeah, it does not look, it looks like a graveyard, rusty, whatever. But I can imagine, like, we've seen some of these things where it's expensive to knock it down. It's also expensive to not maintain it in some ways. Like, do you just leave it there?
Coming up, we will recap Week 5 across the NFL. Everything from the Bills' blowout win over Pittsburgh and Kenny Pickett's first start, message sent and delivered by Buffalo. The Dolphins lose Bridgewater to the new concussion protocol. We'll dive in on that. Plus, the Cowboys win with defense and special teams. And L.A., the Rams, continue to look around going, man, what is going on with our pass protection of Matthew Stafford? We will get to that in hour number 2. When we come back, the college football weekend jam-packed with storylines. We will take a look at the new, updated AP Top 25 and the matchups that this poll will present for us this weekend, including Tennessee and Alabama. That's next on OutKick 360.
Hey, I'm David Hookstead, host of American Joyride, a podcast where we shine a spotlight on patriotism and American exceptionalism. Take a look. This is one of my favorite questions. I love asking, what's the funniest thing you ever saw while deployed?
Oh, man, there's some funny things. So people, I don't know, they think combat is all like, killing and blood and guts, whatever. Man, I laughed every day overseas. We got into a couple, I can't think of the funniest thing, but something that just comes into my mind was a couple little pranks. And I'm not a big prank kind of guy.
Me either.
And so if somebody pulls a prank on me, I will log it, but I usually won't retaliate, because I'll think about it. And then, but if it happens again, I'm going to get you back. If you pull a prank on me, I'm going to get you back like so much worse than you got me. And my kids know that. So there's no pranking that goes on in this house because my kids are well aware that they want, as an example. So we, over in Iraq one time, those old alarm clocks with 2 bells on top and the big dinger in the top?
Yeah.
So there was one of those in our safe house. I don't know where it came from, but it was an electric one, so you didn't hear the ticking noise. So it was silent but it still had the big dinger with the bells on top. Anyway, so we're, like I said, we do stuff at night. So in the daytime we sleep. Well, somebody had, we build these like bunks out of plywood and 2x4. So we had these wooden bunk beds, and somebody had taken some Velcro and stuck this thing up underneath my bed to go off at like 11 a.m., which is like right in the middle of my level 4 REM sleep, and this thing is super loud, and you wake up and it's completely dark in there because we blacken in all the windows to keep the sunlight out so we can sleep. So I wake up and this thing's going off, and I can't find it because it's Velcroed up under the bed, and I didn't do anything. And then it happened again. It was hidden up kind of like in behind a bookshelf. Like a week later, it goes off again in the middle of my sleep cycle. And I don't know who's done it yet, but there's 4 of us in this room. So I know it's not one of those 3 guys. So there's only probably 8 of us total in the house. So I'm like, okay, I got to narrow it down to 4 guys. And then it goes off a 3rd time. This time they got real creative, and they put it up in a ventilation duct where they actually had to unscrew the grate in front of the vent, put it inside there, and then screw it back on. So I couldn't even get to it to turn it off. But now I had it narrowed down to 2 guys. And the good thing is these 2 guys lived in a separate part of the house where they had their own room and their own shared bathroom. So what I did is I took a can of like heavy industrial strength pepper spray, and I just sprayed it on the toilet seat. And then I just sprayed it on and then just kind of wiped it off, leaving a film on there. And the next day, a guy named Kyle Lamb, I don't think I've told this story publicly before, but so Kyle Lamb comes into my room, and I've only seen Kyle mad twice in my life, and he was furious. And he comes in, and I'm sound asleep, and he comes in and starts screaming at me, poking his finger in my chest, and he's like, "What did you put on the toilet paper?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." He's like, "What did you put on?" And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, I guess he went out in the room where the other guys were, and he dropped his pants, and his whole ass and back of his legs were bright red and just like burning because he didn't know what it was.
Right. Make sure to catch every single episode of American Joyride at OutKick.com.
OutKick 360 rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Tennessee and LSU from this past Saturday morning/afternoon. Not a game. The Vols blow out the Tigers in Baton Rouge. Meanwhile, A&M and Alabama, similar to last year in style of play from Alabama, the overall formula from Texas A&M. It was a game late, and I think everything went to plan for Jimbo Fisher except for the final play call, which was awful. Everything in between was a lot of fun, too, as we take a look at the AP Top 25 and the big changes as we head into Week 7, with Georgia being number 1, Alabama down to number 3, with Ohio State number 2. Clemson is up to 4th, Michigan 5th, and Tennessee jumps ahead a couple of spots to number 6 overall. And that means number 3 versus number 6 this weekend in Knoxville for the 2:30 Central kickoff.
Chad, that
at
spot could be
Neyland.
yours. That 3 could be yours.
Oh, the spot at 3?
Yeah. You win, you
With
flip.
the win, they're moving up.
And with the win, they may move ahead of Ohio State or Georgia, with who that would mean they've already beaten this year. I'm confused about Georgia now, the number 1 spot. Look, it doesn't matter. You know, we're talking about undefeated teams that are great, but Ohio State's look far better to me. If we're just going by how you've won, the manner in which you've disposed of teams, I think Ohio State should be number 1 in the country.
Yeah, I think
this
Ohio
week.
State is the best team right now. I understand the schedule argument for that, but again, Ohio State looks really, really good. And the top 10 looks really good. All unbeatens in the top 10 for the AP top 25 right now.
How about James Madison? They've played 5 games at this level, and they're in the top 25.
Good for them. And
That's
they're not eligible for a
amazing.
Sun Belt title
Yeah.
or to play in a major bowl, which is unfortunate because they may go unbeaten. Man,
And they've got Coastal Carolina final game of the year.
there's so many places we can go right now with this. But let's look at some of those unbeatens at the top. Alabama continues to make mistakes that are very un-Bama-like. Now, I chalked this last one up to Jalen Milroe and a backup quarterback more than anything else with their mistakes. And they're going to look like a different team on Saturday because Bryce Young is going to play in Knoxville. At least all indications are that this was a precautionary deal to sit him out. And it's a pain tolerance type thing for the rest of the year. Can't really injure that non-throwing shoulder even more. But, Hutton, we saw Alabama a number of times a year ago, and we were kind of saying the same things, right? This is very un-Crimson Tide-like in the way they have mistakes and penalties during the game. And I'm thinking the same thing on Saturday night, watching A&M get the ball back and roll down the field with Haynes. I was having so many Zach Calzada flashbacks.
It's the same. I
Zach
mentioned the script
Calzada
last
could-
year was
well,
it was
Zach-
too obvious that it could roll
But
this way.
Not even just, I'm talking specifically, Haynes King couldn't move.
Yeah.
I mean, he could barely step into a throw. His delivery of the
jumping off of
ball
that back foot.
looks weird to begin with. And it looked like a guy, I was thinking the same thing with Calzada. How is he completing these passes against Alabama's defense, but rolled them right down the field? It was crazy to watch. It was deja vu.
Everything looks like so much work for A&M. And it
Very
is. If you're
hard.
going to hang with Bama for a full 4 quarters, it is. You've got to have some things go your way, and
And
there's
they
a
did.
formula to it. And, it's the same formula and script that I referenced last week when we saw this spread open up. I was like, I just don't trust the 24 points because we have seen this before, and they're coming off another loss to Mississippi State. Quarterback you don't trust, a defense that can stop the run, but had not been doing it well this year, and an offense that is just hard to watch. And I felt like they did a huge disservice to the offense at the end for A&M that had played that type of game, had Bama, turn it over 4 times. They missed 2 kicks, which they're not doing on a regular basis. And to throw that low percentage pass on the final pass attempt to end the game, I thought the whole idea behind that decision, that I don't think they did a great service to the locker room and the guys that went to on the road in Tuscaloosa and played that type of game against Bama after the season they've had.
I had a flashback to the Broncos play call where on 4th and short or whatever it was to end the game, they just dropped back with Russell Wilson and threw a very low percentage pass into the end zone instead of giving a run pass option. That play, and also, to be fair to Jimbo Fisher, I know Terrion Arnold, the defensive back, heard what he heard and saw what he saw, but to claim that he's yelling, Evan, 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 and that's telling them where they're throwing the ball the whole time.
It's crazy.
He says that's what he heard, so that's how he knew to jump the play. And I'm thinking, okay, it's also a 5-star receiver. You got to be expecting it's going to come his way one way or the other. And they could be trying to get his attention. He could be yelling at him about something or to look
An
at something.
adjustment or something.
I think to say that, well, he tipped off the play because he was yelling it. And I know Jimbo Fisher is getting a lot of criticism. I'm with Hutton in that criticized them for that last play call. I don't think that he was really yelling across the field where with 100,000 people there, Terrion Arnold could hear him calling the receiver out who's going to get the ball in the final play. I don't buy that much, but I hated the play call.
Yeah.
Very low percentage.
Oh, yeah, you have the entire end zone to work with, and you narrow it down to the front corner. And it's not, I mean, the ball's at the pylon where the receiver's going to have to make
Probably
a physical
not in.
catch and battle
Get
his
in.
way in. I mean, if he catches it, I think he's scoring, but it's such Haynes King making that throw. It's a long throw. I don't know. I didn't
wasn't
understand it. Plus, I thought there was room on the 2 snaps, including that one, for him just run in. You know, he's standing back there. I realize the linebackers and the defensive front of Alabama is really good, but I don't know why you didn't attempt to try to go 2 yards and get in from a higher percentage play where all you have to do is cross the plane.
So I'm sending this to Colin right now, and we need to play this either this segment or later in the show. But Nick Saban on the Nick Saban Coaches Show the next day broke down that final play and everything they were thinking defensively, and it is unbelievably good. It's about 1 minute and 20 seconds, but he lays out every responsibility and what Henry To'oTo'o was looking at and how he was green dog spying the quarterback because they were afraid of him leaking up the middle for the run. I mean, just everything they're looking at on that final play and how they approach it, obviously, like a 2-point conversion play, a 2-point play, and how they would defend it. Really, really good from Nick Saban. But, yeah, to put yourself in that position again, which is remarkable for this A&M team with no offense, with a quarterback that you started this season with that was so bad you went to a backup and then you have to put him back in and he's hurt in the end. But you got to do something different on that final play. When you get that second bit of life in that pass interference in the end zone, and you get one play
and then the miraculous catch prior
from
to that.
the 2, you've got to come up with
tip.
something. Yes,
Great
come up with
showing
something
by A&M, but another one of these games, particularly here, where you're with your backup quarterback, where you feel like Bama's just like, we'll do anything and everything we have to do to get this one and survive for next week when we get our guy back.
Well, Jahmyr Gibbs looks like what Alvin Kamara should have looked like at Tennessee right now. 21 carries, 154 yards. He's the fastest guy on the field. He is elusive
he's
and
elite.
tough to bring down. He is great. And now we get to see how great he is because we weren't really going to see that with the defending Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback because they weren't going to run it enough. But with Milroe in, he's had a chance to showcase, and he's been terrific.
So the early line, I believe, Chad, it opened at 8 late Saturday night.
I think it opened at 8.5. It's down to 7.5.
Yeah, for Tennessee and Bama, where Tennessee will host them this weekend. The Battle of Unbeatens. It's the game of the week in what is a great college football weekend. 6 matchups from the top 25 we're showing between teams ranked in the top 25. It's going to be a classic Saturday, and we will see. We can refer to this as moving day. You will see a lot of moving and shaking based on results from this Saturday in Week 7.
No doubt about it. But going back to this past weekend, as we look through what happened this past weekend, Tennessee's win over LSU, as we set up now, Tennessee and Alabama, that was a statement. I did not see that coming. From the opening kick, that was just a bludgeoning. 265 rushing yards in Baton Rouge for Tennessee against a defense that was good against the run coming into it. Tennessee's defensive line finally showed that ability that we've been looking for out of Byron Young and others in that game to get to the quarterback. I thought it was just a real masterclass for Tennessee top to bottom.
I mean, it's the best top to bottom performance I've seen since T. Martin was a quarterback for a road game like that.
Well,
and this is not a great LSU team by any means.
No.
I thought they'd score some.
Yeah.
But I'm also looking at it from a perspective of Josh Heupel wasn't handed anything either. And within a year and a half, he's got them ranked where he's got them ranked. And, Brian Kelly, to get him to leave Notre Dame, they had to give him some benefit on the contract. But I didn't see a team that looked very prepared for what Tennessee was bringing. And that, he's not coaching the kid to fumble the opening kickoff by any means. But the fourth down where you can kick the field goal and just get some points on the board, Tennessee gets the stop early. I don't know if chasing that early is the way to go in a game like that where you quickly go down 2 possessions.
Well,
if you're LSU.
Definitely not, yeah.
Not built
and
Brian Kelly said it at halftime and postgame. He said, We're getting out-coached big time. It's a mismatch right now from a coaching perspective. And I like that he's being honest about it, but not learning from that early mistake. They were 0 for 3 on 4th down for the game. But going for that 4th down early where this was very similar to Tennessee against Florida in that I'm watching that and I don't immediately think, man, Billy Napier's got a ton of confidence in his offense. I think the statement you're making is we can't stop Tennessee. Right. We cannot stop their offense, so we're going to go on every 4th down, and it's like a 13-year-old playing Madden. My guy's that I'm playing is going to keep scoring, so I got to go for it on every 4th down. I don't think you want to look that desperate early, so I did not like that 4th down. What I really didn't like for LSU perspective, and I'm sure their fans didn't either, going for it on 4th with, 30 seconds left in the half from midfield and getting sacked and giving up 3 that at the time felt like the end of the game. When they fell behind 16 at half.
Because Tennessee's getting the ball.
Yes. Instead of 13, that was an enormous error by LSU.
But to go for it on 4th after the opening kick was fumbled and Tennessee gets points and you're on the short field there, your defense on average has allowed just under 15 points per game going into the kickoff against Tennessee. If you get it, it's a different story. But this did not feel close by the end of the first quarter, and then
not on the same level.
I thought another statement and another sign of where things are headed for Tennessee is the final possession for the Vols, where this is not some minute-and-a-half drive. I've been harping on this with their offense. Can you put together a 4-minute offense?
That's what you've been asking for.
And 13 plays, 83-yard drive that took 8:53 off the clock. That is how you get into the top 10, Josh Heupel.
They doubled up your 4-minute drive. Huh?
That is how you figure out how to put a game away with having no issues whatsoever pacing the clock, using the clock to your advantage. They use it to their advantage in the hurry-up, and they use it to their advantage to close the door, slam it shut, and lock it. I mean, it was beautiful, and I thought the overall coaching job by Tennessee here was tremendous. And what's not an easy environment to play in, regardless of the time of kickoff.
And one of the reasons I know that it's not some grand statement to say that Josh Heupel is doing a great job and appears to be a very, very good head football coach in what he's done in Knoxville. But something that really makes me believe this guy understands it and gets it is I'm listening to post-game coverage in the locker room interview with Josh Heupel, and he's excited about their performance. But when asked about that drive, the first thing he said was, disappointing we didn't put it in the end zone and had to settle for a field goal at the end of that, because that's the statement we really wanted to make. When we get the ball, we score touchdowns. And even if we're working the clock and milking it, we are running the ball. We do not need to stall at the end and kick a field goal. Think about this, too. Tennessee scored 40 points and attempted 5 field goals. LSU's red zone defense was really good in this game. They hit 4 of them. They missed a 51-yarder off the upright. But 40 points and 4 made field goals. They were not finishing drives and still were able to get to 40. That's 30-plus points in 8 straight games, a new school record. Also for Tennessee, and the longest such streak in the country.
Where's America's money going to go on this game at 7.5?
Well, it depends. It depends on Bryce Young.
I think it always.
Presuming he's a go.
I feel like these types of things always kind of swing towards the home team, even if that's smart money or not. Only because everyone's going to be talking about the atmosphere in Knoxville all week. It is going to be the center of the college football universe. College game day is going to be there for the second time in 3 weeks at a Tennessee game. So I think that betting money is going to start pouring in on Tennessee, whether that's the smart play or not. I think if Jalen Milroe started this game, Tennessee beats Alabama because their strength is stopping the run. They're 3rd in the SEC against the run. Not great against the pass. So completely flips the dynamic defensively of what you're able to do with Bryce Young in the game.
Yeah, and it depends on how much you trust the Tennessee defense. Last year it was a 7-point spread early 4th quarter in that game, and Tennessee was having to match the up and down play of Bryce Young, up and down the field, not up and down play-wise by him. And it took 1 4th down stop by the Alabama defense, and the game was over. It was a 2-possession game, and that's all she wrote because the Tennessee defense was not going to stop them. Can they get, I was thinking the same thing with Milroe watching him play Saturday night. with the way the Tennessee defense played. 5 sacks, 9 tackles for loss. Daniels was not comfortable in that game against LSU. His longest run was 17 yards. And that's for a running quarterback that can't throw. It fits the narrative of what I saw from Milroe. And now you've got Bryce Young coming back. And can Tennessee's defense find that the extra 1 or 2 possessions for its offense? If so, and, Hooker doesn't take as many hits as he did in this past game where his accuracy goes awry, and he's going to take some hits, they can stay in this game, and this can be an upset.
I'm always a bit wary of the pain tolerance injury deal. So I expect he starts, but I'm not positive he finishes.
Who?
Talking about Bryce Young.
Yeah, that Bryce Young is automatic to play this whole game. And if they get Milroe into the game, obviously, huge advantage Tennessee.
I'll say this, too, about Hendon Hooker. That guy's got to learn how to slide better. He is the most awkward. If there's one knock on his game, it's that even when he decides to slide, it is the most awkward-looking thing. I feel like he's going to tear every ligament in his knee and get knocked unconscious.
Stick his leg in
the
there.
way he slides. It's like his cleat gets stuck, and then he still leaves his head vulnerable to get knocked out by a player who's coming in to hit him hard.
It's like the Ole Miss game last year.
He got leveled looking to his left and not seeing a guy coming in right into his chest, and he was not the same quarterback for about 8 minutes after that. He was completely inaccurate. I'm thinking he's feeling the repercussions of that hit. So, talking about Bryce Young, I'm not sure that Hendon Hooker, after getting banged up in the Florida game, this is going to continue to be a thing unless he gets a lot better at sliding in this game, because he's going to run. I mean, Tennessee's at their most successful, and he's running. They need him to run, especially against Alabama.
It's not something you get good at in a week.
No, and there was the long run against LSU this weekend. You may remember the play I'm thinking of. But at the very end of it, I'm thinking, just slide. Baseball slide. Baseball slide. And it's like he goes frontal, knee down, starts to go to the ground, and then thinks twice, and just gets crushed by a safety.
Waylaid.
Right, and he had no reason getting crushed after about a 40-yard gain, and instead gets crushed.
LSU had allowed just 13 first-quarter points all season. That's what Tennessee put up on them in the first quarter this past weekend. LSU had scored just 3 points in the first quarter against the Power 5 teams, and, of course, did not score in the first quarter this past week against Tennessee. Coming up a bit later, we'll dive in throughout the rest of the SEC and the Power 5. Plenty of results, contenders and pretenders that we saw this weekend, out west in particular. And we will also turn our attention in about 15 minutes to the NFL when we come back, the very latest on the MLB postseason. And the Mets, done, sent packing. They are done for the postseason after 3 games against the Padres, and now the Braves get a chance to await the Phillies. The Phillies, tomorrow is game number 1?
Noon Central Time tomorrow, Braves, Phillies.
We'll discuss that and much more on the schedule on OutKick 360.
Listen, if you missed my show, don't at me. I've got you covered. Take a look.
It is the first time Tennessee and Alabama will play as undefeated teams since 1989. So it's a pretty big Saturday in Knoxville. And, ever since Nick Saban got to Bama, Tennessee has not won in this series. I was actually at the last game Tennessee won over Alabama in 2006, which was a pretty low-scoring affair. I don't think this one's going to be low-scoring with Tennessee's offense and with Bryce Young likely back for Alabama. But it sets up what is a monumental weekend in Knoxville, and it really did come out of nowhere. I tweeted this over the weekend, and you watch what Josh Heupel did. For the lack of enthusiasm about that hire, when he was hired, people wanted a bigger name. People wanted Lane Kiffin to come back. Tennessee fans wanted someone they'd heard of. Mike Gundy was one that was thrown around. But when Danny White brought in the guy he hired at UCF, there weren't a lot of people excited about it. And here we are 18 months later, and I think you could put Josh Heupel right up there with one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen in terms of a quick turnaround and what he inherited.
I think sometimes people see a strike, and particularly in the NFL, because you just want football, right? But they don't know long-term what came out of that strike, Randy. I certainly didn't until you started telling me about it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing it's different about sports strikes, especially football strikes, and now there's partnership between the union and the league. That's why these deals never get too acrimonious, and they usually make a deal because it's not as contentious. At one time, it was very contentious, and you just history fades, years fade, and facts kind of fade at times when it comes to that.
9 to 11 Eastern time at OutKick.com.
Never miss an episode by checking out OutKick.com, but in case you did miss an episode, I've got you covered. So the Democrats and the thinly veiled Democrats of the mainstream media have spent all week trying to blame Hurricane Ian on Ron DeSantis. They, with the help of the green hairs who program the Twitter algorithms, have made idiotic hashtags such as Death Santis Trend. Now, they've tried to red herring, strawman, and a-hole the man into the ground with every interview, every mention, every headline, but much to their dismay, it has not worked. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is too smart for these low-level vultures, and he's come out of this natural disaster looking like the leader he's been since elected into office. And it's not just we Republicans that see it either, and this may be the best video I've seen all week.
About DeSantis, but that gas is here in Arcadia. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it's here in Arcadia, so y'all know who we vote for. I don't know about the rest of you motherfuckers vote for DeSantis.
What do you think the goal of the Democrats are when they are the lawlessness, the DAs, the activist DAs with the no cash bail, letting people out back on the streets to reoffend, essentially neutering communities through gun control? What is, in your opinion, the motivation or the ultimate goal behind that?
Some of these entities and energies just want this place to burn. Now, this does not mean where we got to take stock in self. Some of these people from outside do not like the fact that Democratic leadership has involved us in their nations where we should not be. That's a bit different, but that's a threat too. But as far as Democratic politicians in America, they are taking bags of money from the Soros types. They are the collaborators with the Decepticons.
Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on all of our social media platforms and on OutKick.com as I break down all the hot topics and, of course, give you my final thoughts.
NLDS, ALDS, all set. Braves host the Phillies starting tomorrow. That's the noon Central Time first pitch, followed by Mariners, Astros, then Guardians in New York to take on the Yankees, and followed by Padres, Dodgers.
Let's go!
All 4 games tomorrow. There is your MLB playoffs, and the Mets are out after the pitchers just look old. Against San Diego, the bats were ready to go on the road.
Listen, people want to crush the Yankees. If the Yankees do their thing, that's fine. The Mets, win or go home wild card game, drew 39,241 fans, the lowest of the 3-game series at Citi Field. Not a sellout. I don't want to hear a peep from anybody who's a Mets fan, wears Mets stuff, wears blue and orange, anything. Shut up, go away. End of story. A lot of hype about you this season. You didn't get it done. I don't want to hear anything. The Yankees can get swept out of this thing. You don't get to say a word. You didn't even sell it out. You're do or die last game of the season.
Well, the really frustrating part about the Mets, to add, insult to injury to insult, is that they're not young. I mean, you talked about the pitchers looking old. This may have been their window. This may have been their chance. And then you flip that around and look at the Braves, who their 8 core guys are signed through like 2030.
Just signed another one.
All of them.
He's doing negotiating a contract right now.
It is unbelievable how well set up the Braves are for another decade of winning the NL East and competing for World Series.
It's also unbelievable the discount rate people give you. You just signed a young pitcher, right?
People love that organization, Paul. Just ask Freddie Freeman, who still can't stop talking about the divorce from the Braves and how he didn't really get over it until recently because he's so upset that he's not there.
I prefer to talk with Doug Gottlieb about it. What's the price tag on this pitcher? 8 for 75 years? 8 for $75 million?
You talking about Spencer Strider?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a ridiculous rate, is it not?
It's incredible. I mean, I'm trying to find the tweet right now that I saved. Why do people keep getting ripped off
by the Braves? Go to the market and get real money.
It's not the Braves' fault.
I know, but I mean, they keep doing it. It's ridiculous. These guys should wake up and understand there's real money out there.
Paul's just mad that Aaron Judge allowed himself to go to market and didn't re-sign with the Yankees.
This kid should be going to the Dodgers or the Mets or the Yankees and get Red Sox, get real money.
It's the culture, Paul.
Culture.
It's the culture in Atlanta with that team. And, if Judge was a Brave, he probably would have signed before the season.
2,
and
3.
Been there the whole time.
Wake up. Now go negotiate. Now that you're unhypnotized.
The Mets, though, the boo birds for Max Scherzer in that game on Friday night. And then last night, I got sucked into that game even more than the NFL game on because the gamesmanship with Buck Showalter to send the umpires out in the 6th inning to go look at Joe Musgrove, his ears.
Visually, it looked I would have checked
weird.
it too.
It looked like a pro wrestler getting oiled up. His ears were waxy
greasy
looking.
Yes, and you had the umpire like rubbing him down. Like a mother with a child on the beach, like trying to rub in the sunscreen.
That would freak me out if I was
thought the whole thing was just handled in a weird way, and not just by the ESPN broadcast, but people on Twitter. It's like they decided to change their opinion mid-game, because I saw a lot of baseball people asking questions about that. Looks like some foreign substance on his ears. Boy, Joe Musgrove's spin rate is really off the charts tonight. I wonder why. And then the moment it happened, it was like, what disrespect? What disrespect by Buck Showalter to stop the game and do this. And if you're going to do that, you better be right. And they were not. It was 4-0.
I know a thing or two about Buck Showalter, and here are the things. He doesn't get it done in the end. He's not a finisher, and he continues not to be a finisher. His teams don't know how to get over the mountain. So, and when he's with the Mets, that makes me very happy. Here's my hope.
Here's
Chad.
one other thing, though, on the spin rate, because they were talking about this last night, and I'm forgetting. Davey can find it for us. The ESPN broadcast crew, the pitcher that's on the broadcast crew last night of the game for Mets Padres.
Might have been David Cohn.
I think it was Cohn.
Who's excellent.
But either way, they're talking about, he said, spin rate is definitely much improved tonight than it has been all season. But I think the guy just came ready to play. And I'm thinking to myself, I can understand having a couple miles per hour quicker on your velocity because you're pumped up. But your spin rate being off the charts better, Because this guy hey, it's October and this guy came ready tonight.
It looked like he had a little bullfrog on his ear, like the sunscreen stuff.
I don't know. Clearly, they didn't find anything when the umpire, because they went out there for a while and checked everything on him.
The umpire rubbed him down.
It was a complete shakedown. I mean, I thought he got into some orifices at one point. The way he was getting all up in, it was like,
these teams.
Did you get in the ear hole, sir?
These teams with the big buys, I worried about calming down, cooling off. But now these teams that swept in 2, they've got a lot of time too. I think the Guardians could cool down.
Find out tomorrow.
Yes, we will.
For our Braves and our Yankees.
Our biggest headline from the NFL weekend. We'll bring one each next on OutKick 360. If you're looking for a place to bet on a game today or a futures wager, head to OutKick's Odds Finder. OutKick.com/odds. It's where you'll find spreads, totals, and moneyline odds for every upcoming game. I love it because it's super easy to navigate. Bookmark OutKick.com/odds and make OutKick bets a part of your daily sports betting routine. For bets decided by season-long results, head to OutKick's Futures Finder. OutKick.com/futures. Just select your state, place your bet. It's honestly that simple. And similar to the Futures Finder, the Prop Bet Finder allows you to search by player, team, or game for any sport. Check out the OutKick.com/props, and from there, click the Odds tab. You'll go directly to the sports book to place your bet. Boost your game day experience with OutKick Bets. OutKick.com/bet. Get the edge with OutKick Bets. Just like that, second hour is here. OutKick 360, Monday edition. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Recapping another solid NFL weekend full of storylines. The one from this morning, Matt Rhule, he's done in Carolina. David Tepper holding a press conference with the Panthers and national media members who are in town. Says that he met with Matt Rhule this morning, and the quote was, "It was short, cordial. He's a gentleman, a true gentleman." That from David Tepper, who has named Steve Wilks the interim head coach. Their defensive coordinator is also out in Carolina. My guess is he's leaving with the head coach for a reason. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't stick around and, not get paid. I'm guessing the offset language is not the same for a DC as it would be for Matt Rhule and his $48 million that's still owed his way. Nonetheless, changes coming in Carolina, both at head coach and at quarterback. Baker Mayfield, high ankle sprain. That means P.J. Walker's your starter this upcoming weekend for the Panthers, as I believe they're on the road to face the Rams. That's where we can start with one of the headlines, Dallas over L.A. We will discuss what the Cowboys have been doing with their 4-1 start. Giants over Packers yesterday, 4-1 start for New York. And our biggest takeaway from the NFL weekend, guys, for me, it is the coaches that have a lot of doubters, the coaches and the staffs, for that matter, who have been under fire, produced great results this weekend. Starting with Mike McCarthy in Dallas, not just this weekend, but overall, what they've done. He's got the run game going in Dallas. Their defense is phenomenal. Dak's coming back, and make no mistake, Dak deserves to play immediately based on what we saw from Cooper Rush, but they're winning games. 16 pass attempts from Cooper Rush on the road against the Los Angeles Rams defense, and they won that game easily late based on their defensive pressure of Matthew Stafford. Robert Saleh with the Jets. Outstanding performance against a coach he knows very well from his days in San Francisco, Mike McDaniel. And the storyline with Bridgewater going out, the run game for the Dolphins was working. This was a 19-17 game that quickly became 40-17 in the fourth quarter because of the adjustments made by Robert Saleh's defense for the Jets against the run game and the former run game coordinator in San Francisco, Mike McDaniel. And finally, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge and the job that they did yesterday with a Detroit defense that's not good, but a third-string quarterback making his first career start, Bailey Zappi, and tailoring an offense to fit his style. More of the spread offensive system, which Zappi's known for, not even Western Kentucky. Houston Baptist prior to that in high school, and they were running more of a pro-style system, of course, with Mac Jones. They adapted to Zappi over the week and, again, got the run game going. Defense was really strong, and I give credit where credit's due. Matt Patricia and Joe Judge, I thought, did a really nice job gaming up Detroit.
Well, that leads into my biggest point of the week, which is the death of the Lions. This was the preseason media darling, and I'm guilty of it too. I thought this was a team that was going to be capable of more this year, and they haven't done anything so far this season. But to lose 29-0 to Bailey Zappi. Bailey Zappi was not off the charts great, but he was efficient. 17 for 21, 188, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But even with the losing with the Lions, you could point to, man, Jared Goff is playing really well. He's playing great quarterback for that Lions team. Not so much yesterday. 19 for 35 with an interception and no touchdowns. It's not just losing to a third-string quarterback in New England. It's getting shut out. It's being a huge disappointment so far. It's having the week before where you could at least point to the offense and say, well, one side of the ball is overachieving, but Aaron Glenn's defense isn't good. Nothing was good yesterday for the Lions. Nothing. They got beat 29-0. Their defense was pathetic against a third-string quarterback. Their offense didn't score a single point. Lions are dead, guys, and I didn't think I'd be saying that at this point in the season, which sounds crazy given the history of that franchise. but they got more talent than what they're delivering right now. And Dan Campbell's just not getting it done.
I was annoyed.
As much as I like him.
I had this on my list. I was annoyed by the degree of hype Detroit got because while they were playing offense, they weren't playing any defense. And here, the number one scoring offense goes up against the 22nd scoring defense, gets shut out. Just shut out. And, I mean, they didn't do anything. I mean, it was incredibly disappointing. I had it in front of me, and then I turned it off for something else. But the way their drives ended yesterday, they kept going for it, because they were in trouble, and they ended
going for it not before they were
downs,
in trouble.
downs. They were not converting.
They were 0 for 6 on 4th down.
Yeah.
And I said a couple of weeks ago with Armando, I think the Giants have some legit talent. Now, they were out, they didn't have DJ Chark. They didn't have DeAndre Swift. Other guys are banged up. But I think they have some legit reasons to point to them and say they're on the upward swing in Detroit based on the young nucleus and the talent they have at key positions. That's not on defense. And it's an offense that was averaging 35 points a game on average. They also allow 35 points per game. Point being, I thought after the first couple of games, we're going to find out if Dan Campbell's legit. And he went to a podium yesterday in Foxborough and said that this was the rock bottom moment since he's been there, was yesterday. On the road in New England for an offense that had Bailey Zappi leading the charge because the backup's in concussion protocol.
And 22 games in, it's too late for rock bottom moment in today's NFL. In your coach, ask Matt Rhule about the time frame. That they're a little more patient in Detroit. I'm going to go kind of along the lines of you.
Hey, real quick on the Lions before we get to yours, Paul. I had this discussion with Dan Dockich earlier today on Don't At Me, and I'm curious to get you guys' opinion on this. I feel like, and Matt Rhule is a good example of this, but sometimes for a coach that's trying to change a culture somewhere or get buy-in, whether it be NFL or college, it's almost easier to get the buy-in if the buy-in's not immediate. If you have to prove it a little bit and then a team sees some success maybe midway through season 1, late in season 1, then they all jump on board. I think it's harder to reel it back in if there's immediate buy-in with no results. And I don't know if that's the case with Dan Campbell or not. It felt like there's buy-in with that group, but how much tougher it is to get the buy-in back after you've been granted the buy-in and then you fail repeatedly. So then those who were on board start looking around thinking, man, I don't know if this is working out. Instead of just having tough times early and then you get a glimmer of hope and then you start to add to that with a coach and with a culture.
I'm going with immediate buy-in and immediate results because I think Brian Daboll, who didn't come in with sound and fury like Dan Campbell, came in relatively quiet. Giants fans reasonably have no expectation after a run of coaches who hadn't done anything, is getting it done. They're 4-1. They came back from 17-3 down in London against the Packers, who I think clearly have better talent. And Daboll's finding ways to win games. And I don't mean to invoke the Titans as a Nashville-based show and as somebody who covers the Titans, but in reading about what he's doing, it sounds Mike Vrabel-esque. Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney have big names there in the wide receiver pecking order, but he hasn't played them as much as people expect because they haven't done necessarily what he's expected. And he's had to plug some guys in that nobody's ever heard of, and they've won with these guys, and the players are saying, this isn't the way that we expected to win. This isn't the way that things work, but they're getting it done. And that's what Vrabel, won a Coach of the Year last year doing it that way. And the Titans have a habit of kind of overachieving above replacement level talent. The Giants are doing some of that. They have a quarterback who's banged up, and Daniel Jones ran it 10 times. They've gotten the ball back to Saquon Barkley, who's their best guy. And they're 4-1 in a division where all of us said it was going to be Cowboys-Eagles. They're one of the 5 best teams by record in the NFL. I think this guy, the story of the Giants is this guy can coach because he's got largely the same roster that Joe Judge had last year. And Joe Judge, give him credit like you did, Hutton. They did a really nice job yesterday, but he's back to being an assistant
Yeah.
for one of the all-time greats. He couldn't cut it. Bob McAdoo couldn't cut it. We've got a list of people who couldn't cut it in New York. Right now, they're very excited in New York about the Yankees being in the playoffs and about the Giants being 4-1.
So Barkley, he
got
has
ding.
Yeah, but he came back and then scored the go-ahead touchdown. I mean, he's
70 yards.
Yeah,
solid day.
They led 27-20 with just over 6 minutes of play. Got dinged, came back, and finished off the game. And here's the thing: it's his consistency. He has 533 rushing yards right now through Week 5. Last year, he had 593 yards all season. He is back to being the top-tier caliber player where they drafted him number 2 overall, and no one's ridiculing his play or his impact to the offense right now. Daniel Jones helped engineer a 15-play, 91-yard drive that helped steer the game back in New York's favor yesterday. And at this time last week, we weren't sure if he was going to play based on his injury. So they've got a lot of things going for them with the Giants leading 20-10 at halftime. And they, Rodgers did his thing where they're
the Packers lead.
I had the Giants. Graham Gano's second field goal was. I've got the game going into halftime with the Giants ahead 20-10.
Oh, I may.
Yeah. So again, you can correct me if I'm wrong there, but it was early for me. But the point being, they came to play. There's no way I was picking that game in my upsets last weekend. And there's a day ball effect. Keep in mind.
Yeah, it was 20-10 Packers going into the third quarter. And then the Giants did all the scoring from there. Gano with a field goal, Brightwell with a 2-yard touchdown run, Barkley with a 2-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, and it was Brightwell's touchdown after that 15-play drive. They just controlled the clock and played their style.
15 for 91 yards, 8 minutes.
And the other key with them, keep in mind, in the offseason, and not in the preseason, they had 20 to 25 players out of their 80-man roster at the time for practice. And I came in and said, this has been the worst offseason that I've seen.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's the injuries. It wasn't what they've done. They had zero cap space to truly address the offensive line. Evan Neal has not been great. I mean, he's working through a rookie season at the tackle position. Kayvon Thibodeau just came back to start playing recently. And on top of that, they had their head coach saying that they weren't in shape 2 weeks into camp. They've got to get better conditioning. So this whole thing of, injuries playing a factor at Mike Vrabel and Brian Daboll last year and now to start this year have left all the excuses at the door for any of this BS
Find a way.
that organizations are going to throw out there to their fans about why they're struggling 5-6 weeks into the season.
And fans of those teams, quite frankly, should be pointing to those two coaches and saying, hey, do what they're doing. Go find guys off the street, plug them up, plug them in, get them ready in a week, and win with them. And a sideways shout out here to the Bills, because usually if you lose a coach who goes and does as well as Daboll is doing right now, you feel it. And Ken Dorsey has plugged in for the Bills.
Yeah,
and
no
Allen
problem.
yesterday is throwing for 450 yards, and the Bills haven't skipped a beat, having replaced that coordinator very effectively.
So if the best story in the early going is the Giants and Daboll and what they've been able to do, is the worst story, most surprising on the other end, the Rams so far?
They're terrible. I mean,
I
it
don't know
would
if
have
they're
been
the worst
Houston
story.
if they had lost to Jacksonville.
Well, I'm saying that just based on
expectations.
One team overachieving, another team underachieving so far. I'm trying to think of who you put
They're
on the
a candidate
list.
based on expectations.
And Cincinnati's
The Colts,
2-3 also.
I mean, the Colts are 2-1, but if you look at them play, I think the Broncos are a candidate at 2-3 based on what they look like.
I know that a lot of people in media love the Colts. I put Joe Burrow in Cincinnati and Matt Stafford in the Rams, a totally different league than expectations for the Colts and Matt Ryan.
Yeah.
Personally. So I don't look at them as a huge disappointment because I never thought much of them to begin with.
I think the Rams are a fair conversation.
And if they are, I think Cincinnati is too.
I still think Cincinnati's going to be okay. But, I mean, I think it's a fair discussion about where they are right now.
Coming up, we'll go through the big headlines from yesterday. We'll start with the Jets. and the way that they waylaid Miami in that fourth quarter. 19-17 turned into 40-17, and Teddy Bridgewater in concussion protocol as they go to their third string quarterback in this game, Skylar Thompson. And then we'll look ahead a bit across the other storylines to what it means now moving into week 6. Week 6 as we'll look at the injuries and how it will affect the upcoming matchups. All of that and more over the next couple of hours here on OutKick 360.
Hey, I'm David Hookstead, host of American Joyride, a podcast where we shine a spotlight on patriotism and American exceptionalism. Take a look. This is one of my favorite questions. I love asking, what's the funniest thing you ever saw while deployed?
Oh man, there's some funny things. So people, I don't know, they think combat is all like, killing and blood and guts, or whatever. Man, I laughed every day overseas. We got into a couple. I can't think of the funniest thing, but something that just comes into my mind was a couple little pranks. And I'm not a big prank kind of guy.
Me either.
And so if somebody pulls a prank on me, I will log it, but I usually won't retaliate, because I'll think about it, and then but if it happens again, I'm gonna get you back. If you pull a prank on me, I'm gonna get you back like so much worse than you got me. And my kids know that. So there's no pranking that goes on in this house because my kids are well aware that they want, as an example. So we over in Iraq one time, those old alarm clocks with 2 bells on top and the big dinger in the top.
Yeah.
So there was one of those in our safe house. I don't know where it came from, but it was an electric one. So you didn't hear the ticking noise. So it was silent but it still had the big dinger with the bells on top. Anyway, so we're, like I said, we do stuff at night. So in the daytime we sleep. Well, somebody had, we build these like bunks out of plywood and 2x4. So we had these wooden bunk beds, and somebody had taken some Velcro and stuck this thing up underneath my bed to go off at like 11 a.m., which is like right in the middle of my level 4 REM sleep, and this thing is super loud, and you wake up and it's completely dark in there because we blacken in all the windows to keep the sunlight out so we can sleep. So I wake up and this thing's going off and I can't find it because it's Velcroed up under the bed. And I didn't do anything. And then it happened again. It was hidden up kind of like in behind a bookshelf. Like a week later, it goes off again in the middle of my sleep cycle. And I don't know who's done it yet, but there's 4 of us in this room. So I know it's not one of those 3 guys. So there's only probably 8 of us total in the house. So I'm like, okay, I got to narrow it down to 4 guys. And then it goes off a third time. This time they got real creative and they put it up in a ventilation duct where they actually had to unscrew the grate in front of the vent, put it inside there, and then screw it back on. So I couldn't even get to it to turn it off. But now I had it narrowed down to 2 guys. And the good thing is these 2 guys lived in a separate part of the house where they had their own room and their own shared bathroom. So what I did is I took a can of like heavy industrial strength pepper spray, and I just sprayed it on the toilet seat. And then I just sprayed it on and then just kind of wiped it off, leaving a film on there. And the next day, a guy named Kyle Lamb, I don't think I've told this story publicly before, but so Kyle Lamb comes into my room, and I've only seen Kyle mad twice in my life, and he was furious. And he comes in, and I'm sound asleep, and he comes in and starts screaming at me, poking his finger in my chest, and he's like, "What did you put on the toilet paper?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." He's like, "What did you put on?" And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, I guess he went out in the room where the other guys were, and he dropped his pants, and his whole ass and back of his legs were bright red and just like burning because he didn't know what it was.
Right. Make sure to catch every single episode of American Joyride at OutKick.com.
OutKick 360 rolls on. The Bills took care of business against an inferior team with Pittsburgh yesterday. And so they open up. It's 3rd down and 8 yards. Josh Allen drops back deep in his own end zone, throws a 98-yard touchdown pass, and it was really like 105 yards to Gabriel Davis. And then Pittsburgh fumbled the ensuing kickoff. And the Steelers, on the field goal attempt, blocked the field goal. And you're thinking, man, this – and I'm flipping around at that point, going back and forth the Titans game. I'm thinking, man, this is going to be a good game because it's action early. And then by the time you look up –
joke's on you.
By the time you look up, Allen's got 4 touchdown passes. He's passed for 330 yards at halftime. They crushed them. 38-3 was the final because they went straight vanilla in the second half. But that is, guys, I stand on the soapbox every year and say good teams take care of bad teams in September and October.
And that was that. It's
Buffalo,
just that Pittsburgh is never one of those
Buffalo
teams.
does that.
Pittsburgh's not one of those teams. Here's the thing. That 14.5-point spread was the biggest against the Steelers in history, the first 14-point spread against them. It was too low, way too low. Here's the other thing. Minkah Fitzpatrick, who's excellent, we all agree. He had joint possession with Gabriel Davis on Gabriel Davis's second touchdown, and he really had 2/3 possession for a good segment. And then Gabriel Davis somehow took the ball away from him. I was really surprised by this play because Minkah Fitzpatrick's a strong dude,
great player,
a strong safety, if you will.
Yeah.
And I don't know how Gabriel Davis came out of that with the ball. I almost thought Minkah Fitzpatrick had it long enough for it to be called in the end zone, for it to be called an interception. And Gabriel Davis came out of it with the ball.
Well, any possession is considered possession by the receiver.
Yeah, joint.
1/3 possession is possession for the receiver.
Yeah, and how good of a day was it for Buffalo? Case Keenum had 5 passes in the game. It's the backup in mop-up duty. I thought Kenny Pickett looked pretty good, even in a 38-3 loss. I mean, physically looked the part. He was 34 for 52 for 327 and an interception. But watching a good bit of that game, I thought he doesn't look bad, even though the score is not going to reflect it.
Buffalo is just badass.
And the thing about Pittsburgh can't run the football. Harris had 44. He's averaging 44 yards per game through the first 5 games, and they have 1 rushing touchdown on the season, and it's won by Harris.
Their offensive line has never really fully recovered since Mike Munchak left there to go to Denver.
Yeah.
Where Nathaniel Hackett foolishly didn't hire him if he wanted to be hired. But that's the thing about Pittsburgh. If you're going to have a rookie quarterback or a Mitch Trubisky type, you've got to get back to who you are, which is a run the football, defend the run team, and they're not really either. And then when there a report about Watt, I think Watt's not going to be back as soon as they thought.
Well, they're 0-8-1 without him now.
Yeah,
all time.
I think I saw something about something taking longer.
Well, they had.
He's got a knee on top of his.
He had a knee surgery or a cleanup on top of whatever time he was going to be out with his pectoral injury.
But this sounded like another one of those things, like, and we obviously don't know the details because the NFL doesn't share any injury details. But this sounded like when I read it, Hud, I said, like, why wouldn't he have had this knee surgery the moment he knew he was out with the pack, so that the knee would be in the clear as fast as humanly possible? And it sounded like he had the knee surgery a little bit later than that, where the knee will figure in his recovery time with the pec. I don't know.
The other thing, just to note here, there is a report from the ABC affiliate in Buffalo that the Bills have contacted the Panthers to get talks going for a trade for Christian McCaffrey. That's a legit report.
Dear
and it's from a guy who covers Buffalo on a daily basis. So get ready.
Can you imagine?
F them picks.
WHAM.
That's the Bills. That's what they're going with right now.
I don't think he costs as much as we might. Well, no, they did re-sign him.
It's the same mentality.
I was thinking his contract was
right
ticking out, but they re-signed him to a longer-term deal. I'll see how long his contract runs.
David Tepper, when asked today about trading veterans, quote, I think that we have to figure out how to get a culture of winning here, which we haven't had in a long time in this place. I don't think it ever had a real culture of winning.
Well,
that was his answer about trading talent, trading vets. And last year at the trade deadline, the talk was if McCaffrey was going to come back later in November and December last year, that he could have been on the trade block then. And keep in mind, it was then that the Texans were rumored to be in the trade rumor mill for him.
McCaffrey is signed through 2025. There's a potential out after 2023, but he carries cap hits. He goes up. This year he's 8.7 or 8.8. Next year 19.5 in 2024, 15.4 in 2025. Those are awfully big tabs for an injury-prone running back. It's certainly a go-for-it move. But I can't believe the Bills have 19.5 sitting there waiting for
unless the Panthers are going to pay part of it.
Yeah, this is where the salary cap is
just
all
just
magic.
redoing his deal.
You can manipulate it however you need to.
You could extend him.
Or the Panthers want the pick, so they're going to pay him
Let me translate what David Tepper is saying. Even our good players are losers because they've lost a lot here. So we're open to trading anyone. Because this is a losing team. And Christian McCaffrey is one of those losers. So, yes, we will trade him if needed. DJ Moore is the other one that's being rumored to be traded from Carolina.
Boy, do I know a team that could use DJ Moore.
Several of them.
But locally, the receiving options are so bad on the Tennessee
I also know
Titans.
a team that doesn't pay wide receivers, and DJ Moore just got paid.
They called up Des Fitzpatrick this week to target him 0 times.
The Jets. Well, we'll get to the Dolphins in a minute because the storyline is with Bridgewater and the concussion protocol. But this is a Jets team that all of a sudden they've got some life. If you're buying into this whole theory that the Titans are back after a 3-game win streak, you need to start looking at the Jets that have now won 3 of their last 4, and they also have the same record.
Well, they're
taking advantage of a Dolphins team.
That's it right there.
That has now dropped down a peg in the pecking order of the division.
Beneficiaries of Tua's concussion problems and Bridgewater's. I didn't see the Bridgewater thing. Was there anything to see?
Well, he got hit by Sauce Gardner in the end zone.
Yeah.
On the safety.
But did you see him wobble or anything, and they just took him off? And
I thought
behind
initially he was like referencing his rib cage because he got hit in his ribs.
Yeah, he was kind of just slow to get up. I don't know that it was wobbly per se. It wasn't like Tua when he got knocked off the turf. It wasn't that egregious.
But he was flagged from up top.
Look, it's clear they're being super careful. They're being super careful with that. They're being super careful with the ridiculous call by everybody's favorite referee, Boger, against Grady Jarrett with the sack against Brady, where he didn't really land on him and he didn't really sling him. I mean, that's a pretty basic sack that really killed Atlanta's chances to win a game that would have determined the division leader there. So we're seeing careful football right now.
But we're seeing 2 different things. That call by Jerome Boger is egregious to the nth degree. That has nothing to do with concussion protocol.
No.
That's awful. That's not football. Period. The Bridgewater thing is flagged from an independent neurologist up top. This is Jerome Boger calling unnecessary roughness for a quarterback that just got up and brushed it off after a routine tackle that was gentle. This was gentle by Grady Jarrett. That was BS. Pure BS. And you could argue there are other things that cost the Falcons the game there. But that call has nothing to do with the health and safety of concussions across the league. Nothing. That's and for Boger to get in front of the media or whoever went down to speak to him, and for him to give his reasoning behind why he called it, where there was some unnecessary force. whatever. Like that.
Unnecessarily slinging him to the ground, I think is what he said.
Yeah, that has nothing to do with concussion protocol.
Did you see where the Falcons changed the backdrop of their Twitter account and social media to just a still photo of Grady Jarrett barely placing Tom Brady on the ground?
Laid him down.
Was their team account.
Laid him down.
Back to Jets and Dolphins.
They should bonus him. The NFL should bonus Grady Jarrett for following concussion protocol and not
landing on him.
The NFL being overly careful would be not flagging that play, which was a terrible call by Jerome Bozier, and instead seeing something with Brady after the fact that, oh, we're going to take him out because, something happened there. But that was a terrible call.
I think with Jets and Dolphins, this is a classic ebb and flow NFL thing, right? I mean, the Dolphins were shot out of a cannon while the Jets quarterback was hurt, and they started slowly. Now they've kind of swapped places in terms of trajectories.
Yeah.
We'll see when Tua's back. I have faith in what the Dolphins were doing, and I liked it. But like you said, you can't discount what the Jets are doing right now. And it's a two. Both of those teams look like playoff caliber teams right now.
Let's go back to
based on full body work.
Let's go back to the big story with Teddy Bridgewater and Tua and the relationship with all of this. I am not being a conspiracy theorist when I say this on these two stories, but it is just very coincidental and interesting that the team, at least the team's quarterback that in the game that any concussion protocol was most egregiously played out, whether the protocol was played out perfectly and a doctor made a mistake or whatever happened.
The Bills.
That everyone watching
Dolphins,
on television, notable NFL reporters that we all know and trust were reporting immediately, he's not coming back because of this concussion. That was pretty clearly a concussion on the field.
Well, the team tweeted it.
Right.
The team tweeted he was being evaluated for a head injury.
Everyone is saying that, and then he comes back because of back injury. But when that happened, it sparked this whole conversation about head injury, about protocol, about how we adjudicate these things in the NFL, that the first team penalized by this, and I'm talking about team penalized. I'm not saying that they made something up with Teddy Bridgewater, but it's just interesting how it all comes full circle.
Yeah.
That it's the guy who took over for the guy who should have come out of the game immediately and instead played in a Thursday night game and got knocked out of that game. He's the one that he gets flagged from up top. It's a more thorough process now, it looks like, with protocol, and that's the team that gets penalized
First
again.
quarterback, I would say. There's at least one. There are a couple other players. I think one safety somewhere in the league that.
Well, there were 12 players that missed this past week due to being flagged for a concussion protocol the Sunday after the Tua game on Thursday Night Football.
That they're clearly being more cautious with.
But
the most notable quarterback is who we've got our eye on.
This is what's notable to me about the Bridgewater scenario and why I don't like where this is headed. Because as much as the league has to err on the side of caution, and I get it, they also told us that the tests administered by all doctors, Bridgewater passed those tests immediately. But because he was flagged up top coming off the field after that hit, he's done.
So what's the
It's a
rationale?
no-go.
What was the no-go? Just being flagged?
Based on the
that alone is a no-go.
What's the term we discussed it last week?
Gross motor instability.
Yes.
So they saw gross motor instability.
Well, one guy did or a woman did, and that because of that, it doesn't matter if you pass tests.
Right.
You're done. But they're going ahead and telling us in the game that he passed test administered by doctors, but due to the new adjustments to the protocol. And based on what the spotter saw, he was ruled out immediately.
See, that does
This
leave...
is going to affect more than just Miami.
Yes.
This could affect literally any one of your favorite teams moving forward for any of these quarterbacks moving forward.
Well, here's where it gets really tricky, right? They see gross motor instability, but if they're not showing us a video of what they saw and we don't see it, and it sounds, I didn't see this game or highlights of it, but you guys are making it sound like there wasn't a video in which you saw him wobble or anything.
He's in pain. I mean, you can tell because they were evaluating him for other things with this hit because they got him for he didn't get the ball back to the line of scrimmage on a pass attempt, and he was hit by Sauce Gardner, about to be sacked in the end zone for a safety. Ends up being a safety because the ball didn't reach the line of scrimmage. So it's a turnover. He's coming off the sideline, and he's flagged. But, gross motor instability can be something on the sideline after he reaches the sideline. It doesn't necessarily have to be as he gets up in the end zone.
See, that's where I think the huge problem is going to come, is if he's pulled for gross motor instability that we fans don't see. Then there's going to be an uproar like, hey, he looked fine. He looked fine to us. That's why I also think maybe they shouldn't say exactly why they're pulling a guy.
Oh, they absolutely should. They've got way too much on the line here to have one person up top flagging someone and calling them out, and the fans not to know what's on the up and up.
Okay,
they
but
absolutely have to give us details.
There's a lot of, and I'm not trying to play loosey-goosey here with someone's health after a concussion. Not at all. Because there's obvious moments where, okay, that guy needs to leave the game. And Tua was one of them when that all went down. But it's also very, very precarious to think about seeing someone that may stumble for a second, pulling a starting quarterback out of a game when there's a lot of jobs on the line every week in the NFL. I mean, that ends the game for a team. If you see Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or any starting quarterback, you can stand up too quick and have gross motor instability from the bench. So if a neurologist sees that and sees someone stumble one time, maybe their ankle gave way, and it looks like they're
this is why there was
it looks
the
like
loophole.
they got hit in the head. Maybe something happened.
Well, the gross motor instability has to be because of the brain.
Not anymore.
No, it's specific in the language that we read last week. They will determine if it's due to the head versus your legs broken and you can only walk on one leg. You're going to be ruled out in that case. But I mean, if you get up and you're hurting, the way Albert Breer described this last week and what I read directly from, it specifically mentions gross motor instability from the neurological aspect of it.
But see, that confuses me because he passed the test and then they still stayed out.
What I heard
because
was
he's been flagged now. Now, if you exhibit it, you're done. You can't test out of it now.
So that is the neurologist saying, without performing a test, this gross motor instability on the sideline or wherever it happened is from the brain because of just what they saw.
See, I thought gross motor instability, I'm just hashing this out.
Yeah.
I thought gross motor instability in the change became an absolute no-go, no questions asked, because I thought the loophole was for what they're calling a loophole in the previous language was so that a judgment could be made like you're talking about. Maybe he's got a hurt ankle. Maybe he stepped on a shoelace.
Well, you could do that in the last one, but the other loophole, quote unquote, that they've closed is you could test out of this even if you had gross motor instability with the head injury. You could test out of it based on the protocol and how it was phrased on the sideline, in the tent, in the locker room.
And my understanding is they're taking that away now.
Which is what the Dolphins did, and what the NFL and the NFLPA agreed the Dolphins followed.
And took away now.
And the independent neurologist was removed. They removed that, yes.
Turned it into a no-go.
So now if you exhibit that from the head injury.
Doesn't matter what you do test.
You cannot test out, even though they're telling us that the player test out.
That's what I'm saying they shouldn't be able to say. They shouldn't. I think they raise an uproar where they say, well, the guy exhibited gross motor instability. We called him a no-go, but he tested out. What's the benefit of that? If he exhibits a no-go, he's out. They should say he exhibited a no-go and he's out. I don't know why they're telling you details. But he tested out, so we're going to create conflict here by giving you a full picture of the story.
It's anti-science to me to just say, okay, I'm going to say with the naked eye, without having observed this person, but I saw them stumble, I believe this is gross motor instability caused by the brain. But then we're going to get doctors in front of the person, and they're going to determine it's not from the brain, but yet they still have to stay out because the new protocol says that you spotted it from up top and said that, even if there's further evidence that it's not from the brain.
Well, it doesn't only have to be.
That just doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It doesn't only have to be spotted from the top. Somebody, the sideline person could spot it as well.
But
somebody
spots. If I'm 40 yards away, you can say that and say, hey, come over here. We got to get this guy checked out.
Or they could spot on the video.
But then if everything checks out and the guy's saying, no, it's from this or whatever, and you're looking at it and eyes look fine and everything's okay, they still have to stay out. right? Based
Yes.
on this new protocol?
Yeah.
Yes, you're out. So that's what I'm saying. Like, we're headed down, and I understand why they're doing it. I'm not against the idea of trying to protect players from themselves and seeing what we saw from Tua on the Thursday night game. But this is going to lead us to more and more discussion trying to determine if the player was concussed or not versus that player was concussed and they just allowed him back in.
Yeah, and when it happens to Rodgers in a playoff game, in the first quarter of a playoff game.
Or will it? That's my question.
Yeah, well,
is
it
that
could.
if that hit happens to Brady in the NFC Championship game, there's going to be a
Are they
flag on the
adjudicating
defense.
it the same way?
There's a flag on the defense on Grady Jarrett.
Probably an ejection also, if it happened to Brady.
But it's also dependent on. I mean, it is a judgment from up top too. I said last week I would not want to have this job.
No, they've created a huge, complicated scenario. It was a huge, complicated scenario before, but the visuals of Tua against Buffalo enhanced it and further complicated it. And now, on a case-by-case basis, we're gonna now have a Monday segment. Do we think he was concussed?
Concussed or not?
Yeah. Our fastest growing segment. We haven't even started it yet.
Concussed or blood sugar issue? That's going to be the new segment.
Or dizzy because he got up too fast in the heat.
But there's also cases where guys are flagged up top. So here's my question with the protocol now. The independent neurologist is calling down to have a player checked. The only way you're calling down to have a player checked, unless as I'm sitting there, you see something. So if you see it, is it a no-go?
Most of the time, it's going to be
no. Because yesterday, Christian Fulton in the Titans game was flagged for something. They wanted to test him.
Was it when he was down or separate?
Yeah, and it was very obvious they were checking him out, and he's back in the game.
Here's another question for you. You know, for the longest time, he got the wind knocked out of him was code for a concussion. But there are times where a guy legitimately in football gets the wind knocked out of him.
Of course.
So to what you're saying, a guy getting up from getting the wind knocked out of him can look like he's got gross motor instability.
Let me briefly read this one paragraph. This is from Florio from last week. Under the protocol, a player who demonstrates gross motor instability must be evaluated for a concussion. He can, however, return to play if the team physician and unaffiliated neurotrauma consultant conclude that the gross motor instability did not have a neurological cause. And now the loophole is closed to where if you are deemed to have gross motor instability, even if you test out, you are no longer allowed back in the game. So that's what they're telling us. So to me, if you're calling down to have the guy checked, you're all but ending that guy's day.
Now, here's
that's how I view it.
See, I see this as now just taking all this in, I see it as an overreaction to one doctor, medical staff probably doing a really bad job, where this is not happening regularly across the NFL. We do not see this. How many times have we seen this Tua issue happen? Where everyone watching on TV is like, oh, the guy's concussed. Oh, here he's coming right back in the game because some neurologist claims it's a back issue.
Yeah.
Not that often.
So now this seems like an overreaction
Here's
to that
another thing.
one issue.
Do you think bunches of players who are sitting around having lunch, position groups, playing dominoes or whatever, are saying, don't get up too fast?
Well, if you do that,
settle yourself down.
Then they're still going to – what's going to stop them from saying they laid there too long?
Yeah.
Well, that's
so
not gross motor instability.
But again, we're
laying down
relying,
too long, though, Chad, is not a no-go.
I would just,
getting up and exhibiting gross motor instability is a no-go.
I would rather rely on multiple trained neurologists actually examining a player, a patient in this case, and determining whether or not they've been concussed, as opposed to one person calling down or calling from the sideline and saying, that guy's out.
But to get to that test, if you're a player, to get to that test, you first have to exhibit no gross motor instability. So you might stay down longer to, quote unquote, clear your head.
But again,
so that you can stand up and get to that test.
It doesn't matter if someone, we still have not seen the gross motor instability. That person saw it. That flagged Teddy Bridgewater.
Right. But if I'm saying maybe, I'm not advocating him getting back in that game because I think it was concussed.
You army crawled.
I think it was concussed. But if
stay down.
If you have the kind of concussion that you can play through and that you want to play through if you're a player, which I'm not advocating by any means, Or if you've got something else, the wind knocked out of you, that I got the wind knocked out of me here. I'm not going to look good getting up. It might look like a concussion, and I know it's not. I'm going to stay down longer now to get cleared up so that there's no way anybody could think I've got a concussion based on my appearance.
Maybe the key is just if trainers come out to evaluate you, you're not technically getting the call.
Right.
Right. So
and you say, what do I do here? I'm a little wobbly, but I don't have a concussion.
I don't know. I don't know what you mean.
Right? We're in the heart of the debate.
This seems to be a case of they took something that was an issue in the one game
and made it an issue in every case.
They have possibly made it an issue multiple times over the course of a season.
And if it goes too far the other way, maybe we see another adjustment to it. But if we see another adjustment to it, some people will take it as soft on concussions, and they can't be seen as soft on concussion.
Yeah, but they've been following this protocol for years. They did not want to be soft on the Dolphins if they did anything wrong.
No.
Trust us on that. And both concluded that everything was followed word for word on the old protocol in that. And by the way, the NFL, Albert Breer said the NFL did not want to remove the independent neurologist in Miami. The NFLPA did. Coming up.
That's scapegoaty to me.
Coming up, we will give you the other injuries from yesterday and how it affects your favorite team or fantasy team moving forward. And then headlines across college football and the NFL on OutKick 360.
Hey, listen, if you missed my show, don't at me. I've got you covered. Take a look.
It is the first time Tennessee and Alabama will play as undefeated teams since 1989. So it's a pretty big Saturday in Knoxville. And, ever since Nick Saban got to Bama, Tennessee has not won in this series. I was actually at the last game Tennessee won over Alabama in 2006, which was a pretty low-scoring affair. I don't think this one's going to be low-scoring with Tennessee's offense and with Bryce Young likely back for Alabama. But it sets up what is a monumental weekend in Knoxville, and it really did come out of nowhere. I tweeted this over the weekend, and you watch what Josh Heupel did. For the lack of enthusiasm about that hire, when he was hired, people wanted a bigger name. People wanted Lane Kiffin to come back. Tennessee fans wanted someone they'd heard of. Mike Gundy was one that was thrown around. But when Danny White brought in the guy he hired at UCF, there weren't a lot of people excited about it. And here we are 18 months later, and I think you could put Josh Heupel right up there with one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen in terms of a quick turnaround and what he inherited.
I think sometimes people see a strike, and particularly in the NFL, because you just want football, right? But they don't know long-term what came out of that strike, Randy. I certainly didn't until you started telling me about it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing it's different about sports strikes, especially football strikes, and now there's partnership between the union and the league. That's why these deals never get too acrimonious, and they usually make a deal because it's not as contentious. At one time, it was very contentious, and you just history fades, years fade, and facts kind of fade at times when it comes to that.
9 to 11 Eastern time at OutKick.com.
Never miss an episode by checking out OutKick.com, but in case you did miss an episode, I've got you covered. So the Democrats and the thinly veiled Democrats of the mainstream media have spent all week trying to blame Hurricane Ian on Ron DeSantis. They, with the help of the green hairs who program the Twitter algorithms, have made idiotic hashtags such as DeathSantis Trend. Now, they've tried to red herring, strawman, and a-hole the man into the ground with every interview, every mention, every headline, but much to their dismay, it has not worked. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is too smart for these low-level vultures, and he's come out of this natural disaster looking like the leader he's been since elected into office. And it's not just we Republicans that see it either, and this may be the best video I've seen all week.
About DeSantis, but that gas is here in Arcadia. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it's here in Arcadia, so y'all know who we voted for. I don't know about the rest of you motherfuckers vote for DeSantis.
What do you think the goal of the Democrats are when they are the lawlessness, the DAs, the activist DAs with the no cash bail, letting people out back onto the streets to reoffend, essentially neutering communities through gun control? What is, in your opinion, the motivation or the ultimate goal behind that?
Some of these entities and energies just want this place to burn. Now, this does not mean where we got to take stock in self. Some of these people from outside do not like the fact that Democratic leadership has involved us in their nations where we should not be. That's a bit different, but that's a threat too. But as far as Democratic politicians in America, they are taking bags of money from the Soros types. They are the collaborators with the Decepticons.
Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on all of our social media platforms and on OutKick.com as I break down all the hot topics and, of course, give you my final thoughts.
OutKick 360 with your injury notes coming off of Week 5. Ravens' Marcus Williams, one of the defensive backs, facing a tough challenge against Cincinnati's offense. Safety had a wrist injury last night. He's being evaluated today. Mentioned earlier, Panthers dealing with an injury to Baker Mayfield. P.J. Walker expected to start, as we will see Steve Wilks as the interim head coach for the Panthers. James Conner left for the Arizona Cardinals. The often injured running back, injured yet again. Joey Bosa is already out for 8 or 9 more weeks. Now Nick with a groin injury could not finish. He missed all but 2 games in 2020, had 19.5 sacks a year ago, already has 6 sacks this year, and he's out for their evaluation there. And Rashad Penny, done for the season in the backfield for Seattle.
Ever.
Fractured tibia. He's done, and that means Kenneth Walker III, come on down. Tyreek Hill left in a walking boot. He was on the injury report late last week with a groin issue and had a foot problem yesterday in New York. McDaniel said he was also managing a calf issue, I believe, from that.
Convinced myself to draft Penny off of those 5 weeks, and I got exactly 5 weeks.
Hey, congrats to the 49ers also. They were able to end Matt Rhule's coaching career even without Nick Bosa in that game. So great job by them.
Chris Olave also in concussion protocol.
Emmanuel Mosley also for the 49ers, former Vol, had a pick 6 in the game and then later tore his ACL and is now out for the season.
Brutal.
I feel like injuries are starting to mount, and if it keeps going at this level, it's going to be beyond what we've
always
seen lately.
Always a war of attrition, and sometimes you get struck with that just as an organization. 49ers have been through that once with Nick Bosa, and now they want him to cash in. He was on a great trajectory last year and then to start this year, and we'll see how long he's going to be out. We will talk big moments from the football weekend to lead off hour number 3 next on OutKick. If you're looking for a place to bet on a game today or a futures wager, head to OutKick's Odds Finder. OutKick.com/odds. It's where you'll find spreads, totals, and moneyline odds for every upcoming game. I love it because it's super easy to navigate. Bookmark OutKick.com/odds and make OutKick bets a part of your daily sports betting routine. For bets decided by season-long results, head to OutKick's Futures Finder. OutKick.com/futures. Just select your state, place your bet. It's honestly that simple. And similar to the Futures Finder, the Prop Bet Finder allows you to search by player, team, or game for any sport. Check out the OutKick.com/props, and from there, click the Odds tab. You'll go directly to the sports book to place your bet. Boost your game day experience with OutKick Bets. OutKick.com/bet. Get the edge with OutKick Bets. Coming up in 20 minutes, we will recap the ending of Alabama and Texas A&M from the final play call and that series down at the goal line from Nick Saban's perspective. He'll explain what he was telling his defense to be on the lookout for, what they were expecting versus what they got from Jimbo Fisher and company. Tennessee wins. The Vols improve their record. They remain unbeaten. They'll now host Alabama this coming Saturday. And the Titans went on the road. They're always standing on the edge of a cliff, but they win again, third in a row. They go into the bye week at 3-2 in sole possession of the AFC South because Jacksonville, yet again, we mentioned this yesterday or last week, favored against the Texans. And the last 2 times, they have lost to the Texans, and the Texans did it again. And now Jacksonville is regressing to the mean.
Colts
Trevor
can't beat
Lawrence
the Jags.
looks more like Trevor Lawrence of last year. Colts
can't beat the Jags. Jags can't beat the Texans.
Yeah.
Colts can't beat the Titans. Very weird division.
It sets up for what's going to be an interesting run here because the Colts now have Jacksonville next week.
And then the Titans.
And Davey Hudson mentioned this. Give him full credit. He predicts that Jerome Boger will get that game. And I don't disagree with him on that. And then right after that, they'll play the Titans. The Colts will. Then the Titans will play the Texans. And you'll start to sift through all this where I go back to Thursday night. I said last week, Chad, that win, they had no business winning that game 12-9 against Denver. You know, that win felt like a loss, but that win counts as a win on the win-loss column now at 2-2-1. And that game will keep them squarely in the mix. Imagine if they lost that game and what the AFC South standings would look like today compared to what they are, which is the Colts there. You've got the Jags 2-3, and then Houston just picked up their first win of the season.
Well, it's a season saver. It felt like at the time, and it still feels like it today. And the Colts, for as bad as they've been, they're 2-0 against the AFC West, which is crazy.
That's another good point.
I mean, they beat the Chiefs, and they won in Denver. If we would have said that before the season, we'd say that they might be undefeated.
Oh, the media is correct. Yeah.
Finally,
You're right.
The media just had it right all along. This Colts team is a Super Bowl contender. But instead, they've sucked. And they sucked last Thursday, and they still won in Denver.
And you look at the Titans, who've won 3 in a row. They're going on a bye. They come back. They play the Colts at home, who they've beaten and we don't think are very good. They go to the Texans, who they should beat. They're at the Chiefs on a Monday night. They probably get slammed there. Then they host the Broncos. They could win 3 out of those 4.
Sure.
Then things get really tough. But they could be sitting, with 6-3.
Could, and still not be very good.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I think things take a downturn. I mean, they're at the Packers. That's tough. They host the Bengals. I still think that's tough, though they're going to have revenge on their mind for that, right? Then they're at the Eagles. Then they start against the Jaguars. Then they're at the Chargers, and they still have the Cowboys. They've got a lot of losable games coming up. But the next month, I think, outside of the Chiefs, they could be in pretty good shape.
How about the NFC East, by the way, with the Giants, Cowboys, and now Eagles? They remain unbeaten. If you start to look to their schedule, they've got Dallas this coming week, and Prescott could play.
Prescott's going to play and screw everything up for them. I really believe that. I think the Cowboys, the way they're playing right now, defensively and smart on offense, is a great formula for them. Dak comes in, and all of a sudden they're looking for some high-flying offense, and I think trouble.
See. Paul, you know what you're discussing right now? A quarterback controversy.
Yeah,
you're saying putting Dak Prescott back in would be worse for the Cowboys. That, by definition, is a quarterback controversy.
Here's what I'm saying. You got to put Dak back in, but you got to play the same style of ball. Don't change back.
You know what? I'll say it. Don't start Dak until Cooper Rush loses. Why would you mess with this run right now? I wouldn't change a thing.
Or until Dak's hand is excellent.
Again, I would not change a thing. Let this guy lose and then put Dak in.
They've been playing very good football.
Watching the game, though, with the Cowboys and Rams, they had a defensive touchdown. They blocked a punt, got a short field. Run game was phenomenal. Defense is extraordinary. Cooper Rush attempted 16 passes the entire day. We completed 10 of those for a little over 100 yards. It's they play it safe with him, and for good reason.
Working.
It's working, but it's not like Cooper Rush played like Bailey Zappi yesterday.
He's a minimalist. But it's working.
He struggled. There were a couple times in this game where he was. I thought, man, if they get Dak Prescott back and we get, keep in mind, this was the highest scoring offense in the NFL last year. Dallas.
That's crazy.
With Dak Prescott, where could they end up? I'm not worried about like playing the same style. I'm thinking, where can they go if Dak is like last year's version of Dak Prescott? I'm guilty of it too. I saw what he did in Week 1 against Tampa, but I've also seen some bad quarterback play throughout the league this year.
Don't you have a little bit of a feeling that it'll get messed up?
What do you mean? His hand?
No, what they're doing will get messed up with the change.
They're incredible on defense. That's number one.
So that's not going away with the quarterback.
They're actually running the football well with Elliott and Pollard. Pollard had a 57-yard touchdown run in that game yesterday. Elliott, 78 yards rushing, and then you had 86 from Pollard. There's a physical tone to their front now that is a bit different than what we saw on that Thursday night against Tampa.
He can make it harder for the defense.
They're not turning the football over.
That's where it is. He can make it harder for the defense with an untimely
but with Dak
turnover.
Prescott, I expect him to throw more than 16 passes in a game.
Yeah.
I don't expect them to have to limp around and play off of the run game instead of relying on your superstar quarterback to make a throw.
Bailey Zappi attempted 21 passes. Cooper Rush attempted 16. That's just the formula for this Cowboys team. All I'm saying is I would not mess with that formula that has you on this win streak right now. Now, it's going to bite them, you would think. You can't just continue to not have a passing attack. But when that happens, absolutely. Let's go to Dak Prescott, who does bring more to the offense. Call me crazy. I'm just not someone, if I'm the head coach, that I'm not going to mess with a winning streak and success when you have a formula for success. And that formula with Cooper Rush is don't get us beat. Be efficient. We're not going to throw the ball that much. Get us into a good play. Run the football. Play great defense. And that's working for the Cowboys right now.
After this Eagles game, they've got the Lions at home and the Bears at home. I mean, those are two games they shouldn't be able to screw up any way, shape, or form. Then they go to the Packers.
There was a buzz last week that he could play this past weekend. I think it's happening sooner rather than later. And Prescott's going to have to fall off a cliff for me to go to Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush is a good backup. But your superstar caliber, next level guy that's coming off a year where the offense was the number one scoring offense in the league is Dak Prescott. There's no way that I can't add in some lighter fluid to their passing game.
I agree. I would go back to him. I just have a feeling something's going to go wrong when they do go back.
Well, I mean, if they don't protect him the way they didn't protect him in Week 1, then something will. I mean, he was battered or knocked around in that game. And I don't know how he grips the football after this.
If they come in and he throws interceptions and
it'll
he's holding the ball and they lose and they had a winning streak going, I'll second guess. Why you did it then. I would let this guy play his way out of it because whatever they're doing right now is working. They're winning. And that's not me saying Cooper Rush is better than Dak Prescott. Don't mistake what I'm saying. He's not. Dak Prescott is the more talented quarterback, but they're winning with Cooper Rush. They've got a very specific formula for winning, but it's working.
The Eagles, same thing. They led 14-0 early yesterday against Arizona. The Cardinals had a great chance to go win this game, or at least tie it. So they led, it was tied at 17 with about 9 minutes left in the game. The Eagles grind out a drive. They go down, get a field goal. 2017 was the final score. It was 20-17 after this 8-minute drive. About a minute 50 left on the clock. They kick the field goal to go up by 3. And then Murray starts leading the drive back down in Arizona. And he picks up the first down if he's a running back or a wide receiver. He does not pick up the first down because he's a quarterback giving himself up. And as he slides, his knee never touches. But as he slides, it's based on when you give yourself up, which was about a half yard
early
before the line to gain. And instead of first down, it's 3rd and 1. They go spike the football, so it's 4th and 1 when you stop the clock. And he did not pick up the first down based on where he started his slide. They attempt the field goal. They miss it. Philadelphia wins. They remain unbeaten. The Eagles didn't play a bad game. They gave up points early. They still have not scored in the first quarter, but they settled in. Offense came back to make some plays, and I thought Hurts was at his best on that final drive to go get a field goal.
Should Murray have known better?
Yeah, but I also think we have the benefit of seeing that line on the field, and so do the refs on the replay. Like in real time, I thought he got the first down. But yeah, I mean, situational awareness is something that's been a knock on him. So, yeah, I mean, you can be critical of that, knowing where to slide. At the same time, if he goes and gets crunched and crushed, and he's in concussion protocol, then we're ripping him for not sliding in that situation. I don't know. He's kind of in a lose-lose situation unless he just slides at the perfect time. He was very close to the line of the game. Yeah, but he did give himself up about a half yard before. They got the call right based on the rule.
Kyler Murray's in a tough spot in terms of perception because he does something like that, and it's impossible not to immediately think.
No,
this is a guy who needed a clause to study, and his awareness was lacking in this one moment. Fair or not, that's what the Cardinals have allowed when they did that. I will always second guess Kyler Murray now, and I know that I'm not alone. Unless
that has
unless
nothing to do
they're
with film
undefeated
study.
And he's great. No.
It's more game awareness,
but it's
situational
it's one of those things that, maybe this guy isn't the smartest football player. You're going to go back to that whether it's fair or not every time something like this happens. But that's the unfortunate part of that story was if they're not undefeated and he's not playing great, there's going to be second guessing.
Yeah, and they, if it's a first down, I think the awareness comes from not knowing that he was short on the line to gain. So he immediately gets the offense together, quick spike. And instead, it ends up being 4th and 1. They have to attempt that long field goal, ball game after the miss. And Jalen Hurts.
You got to be a yard long and not a half yard long, not a half yard short. You got to be a yard long in that situation to cover yourself.
Jalen Hurts continues to sound like a leader and an MVP type guy post game. He was asked about, the 5-0 start and blah, blah, blah. And he immediately just stopped and just said, look, I don't want to hear about the record because I didn't want to hear about the record last year when we were 2-5. You guys kept telling me what the record meant then. This record doesn't mean anything at the same point of the season for us in October. Stop talking about it. Then they're off to Dallas, back to Philly for a big game against Dallas. I just like the tone and the direction that he's taking his offense. We always talk about coaches sending the message. He's sending a message to that group. And he has now scored the most rushing touchdowns by a quarterback in his first 25 starts. Made that official yesterday, 19 of those. He's had a rushing touchdown in 19 of his 25 starts. He passed Cam Newton yesterday. Impressive start.
Impressive guy.
That team is really good.
Oh, they're going to – so if they get past Dallas – if they get past Dallas and that defense, I cannot wait to watch Micah Parsons against Hurts in this and how they address where he is this coming week. But here's their upcoming schedule. So if they survive the Cowboys, their stretch comes against bottom feeders. And I realize you cannot take for granted any of these teams based on how some of these games go. But they have the Steelers, Texans, Commanders, and Colts. All that takes them up to week 12. And they will play the Packers and then the Titans around that time frame of their schedule. So they have a chance to be unbeaten as we're starting to look ahead to the Thanksgiving schedule. They could be a real story.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that division to me is a real story right now. With the Cowboys on this run, with Cooper Rush, with the Giants, shockingly with one loss, the Eagles. It's the best division in football right now. From a record standpoint, they're better than everyone.
Despite the Commanders.
Chad, how good is Tennessee compared to Georgia in your mind? Because that's where we're going to get as we even depending on how the game goes against Alabama. If they beat Bama, then that's the game of the year. I'm not even trying to look there yet. I'm looking ahead to even if Bama beats them, where are they with Georgia as you try to address where Georgia is? Because Stetson Bennett he's tailed off. His numbers are nowhere close to what they were through the first 3 weeks of the season. They have question marks, right? They've had a get-right game, but they still have question marks. And I see a lot of solutions on Tennessee's side of things. I see solutions for Georgia too. I think I'm trying not to be blinded by where I thought Georgia was versus where they are, which is still really good, but not last year, right? And Tennessee is not last year, and they're above expectation of where we had them to begin the season. So I'm trying to balance those two.
Tennessee is a lot closer to Georgia than they were a year ago. Let's start there. I mean, I think offensively they're superior in their system and how they can score.
Yeah.
But here's the problem with Tennessee versus Alabama, Tennessee versus Georgia right now. And I don't think they have this issue with anyone else that's on their schedule. From a talent perspective, Tennessee still has some very talented players at the top. And they had this a year ago also. It was some spots. They lack the depth. They lack I view Tennessee going into a game against Alabama as here is everything that has to happen right, and here is everyone who has to play great in order for Tennessee to win the game. I'd say the same about Georgia. When you're looking at it from Georgia or Bama's perspective, you're looking at it saying, here are all the different ways that we can win this game with certain things going wrong, but yet other things are very, very right because we have superior players. And Georgia and Alabama have superior players to Tennessee. And there's no quick fix for that. This is still not a deep team. It's a bad secondary for Tennessee. They're getting the absolute most out of their defensive front, but I don't think that's going to last against Alabama and Georgia throughout an entire game. They're overachieving at a number of spots. I think their offense is absolutely not a fluke at all. It's just that good. They're number 1 in America in yards. They're number 2 in points.
Yeah, neither's Hendon Hooker.
But I look at these games, and now, if I was just going to do a side-by-side breakdown of here's how this team wins, here's how this team wins, with Tennessee versus Alabama or Georgia, that list is going to be a lot longer than Georgia or Alabama's in terms of the only things they need to do to make sure they win.
Yeah, and they can, you're right. I mean, they can have 4 turnovers and 2 missed field goals and still win a game. Alabama made a season of that a year ago, and they've done it so far yet again with A&M last weekend. So they're very both teams that we're referring to here very well coached. So are the Vols.
Yes,
and I think that's where the intrigue comes for me this year is where does Heupel match up this year with what we've seen against the Saban and Smart coach teams.
I don't think Tennessee is going to be at a gross coaching disadvantage in any game against any coach in America. I feel confident saying that about Josh Heupel. I'm not giving them the advantage over Nick Saban or Kirby Smart, guys who've won national championships. Yeah. But I don't look at that game and think, oh boy, Nick Saban is going to coach circles around Josh Heupel in this game.
Coming up, we will visit with Brooke Kromer from the Draft Network, details on the firing of Matt Rhule in Carolina. But first, when we return, Nick Saban walks through and talks through the ending of this past Saturday night's game against Texas A&M at Bryant-Denny Stadium. That's next on OutKick 360.
Hey, I'm David Hookstead, host of American Joyride, a podcast where we shine a spotlight on patriotism and American exceptionalism. Take a look. This is one of my favorite questions. I love asking, what's the funniest thing you ever saw while deployed?
Oh, man, there's some funny things. So people, I don't know, they think combat is all like, killing and blood and guts, whatever. Man, I laugh every day overseas. We got into a couple, I can't think of the funniest thing, but something that just comes into my mind. It was a couple little pranks. And I'm not a big prank kind of guy.
Me either.
And so if somebody pulls a prank on me, I will log it, but I usually won't retaliate, because I'll think about it. And then, but if it happens again, I'm going to get you back. If you pull a prank on me, I'm going to get you back like so much worse than you got me. And my kids know that. So there's no pranking that goes on in this house because my kids are well aware that they want, as an example. So we, over in Iraq one time, those old alarm clocks with 2 bells on top and the big dinger in the top?
Yeah.
So there was one of those in our in our safe house. I don't know where it came from, but it was an electric one, so you didn't hear the ticking noise. So it was silent but it still had the big dinger with the bells on top. Anyway, so we're, like I said, we do stuff at night. So in the daytime, we sleep. Well, somebody had, we build these like bunks out of plywood and 2x4. So we had these wooden bunk beds, and somebody had taken some Velcro and stuck this thing up underneath my bed to go off at like 11 a.m., which is like right in the middle of my level 4 REM sleep, and this thing is super loud, and you wake up and it's completely dark in there because we blacken in all the windows to keep the sunlight out so we can sleep. So I wake up and this thing's going off and I can't find it because it's Velcroed up under the bed, and I didn't do anything. And then it happened again. It was hidden up kind of like in behind a bookshelf. Like a week later, it goes off again in the middle of my sleep cycle. And I don't know who's done it yet, but there's 4 of us in this room. So I know it's not one of those 3 guys. So there's only probably 8 of us total in the house. So I'm like, okay, I got to narrow it down to 4 guys. And then it goes off a third time. This time they got real creative and they put it up in a ventilation duct where they actually had to unscrew the grate in front of the vent, put it inside there, and then screw it back on. So I couldn't even get to it to turn it off. But now I had it narrowed down to 2 guys. And the good thing is these 2 guys lived in a separate part of the house where they had their own room and their own shared bathroom. So what I did is I took a can of like heavy industrial strength pepper spray, and I just sprayed it on the toilet seat. And then I just sprayed it on and then just kind of wiped it off, leaving a film on there. And the next day, a guy named Kyle Lamb, I don't think I've told this story publicly before, but so Kyle Lamb comes into my room, and I've only seen Kyle mad twice in my life, and he was furious. And he comes in, and I'm sound asleep, and he comes in and starts screaming at me, poking his finger in my chest, and he's like, "What did you put on the toilet paper?" And I'm like, "I don't know what you're talking about, man." He's like, "What did you put on?" And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Anyway, I guess he went out in the room where the other guys were. He dropped his pants, and his whole ass and back of his legs were bright red and just like burning because he didn't know what it was.
Right. Make sure to catch every single episode of American Joyride at OutKick.com.
Looking forward to visiting with Brooke Kromer momentarily. The Draft Network will get her take on Matt Rhule fired in Carolina and the culture behind the scenes there with some of the coaches wanting out. Chad, you heard this and brought it to our attention. Saban on his coach's show discussing the finish to Bama and A&M.
So if anyone ever wanted to know how you can win 7 national championships, it's that you get as good at talking about football as Nick Saban is at talking about football. Tennessee-Alabama is going to be the biggest, most high-profile game of the upcoming weekend. Alabama-Texas A&M was one of the more high-profile games, maybe the highest-profile game from this past weekend. The game ended on one final play that Alabama defended very well, and Texas A&M did not complete a pass into the corner of the end zone. We're going to let you see this if you're watching, hear this if you're listening right now. This is Nick Saban on his coach's show going through the video of everything going through his defensive staff's mind as they prepare for this final play from Texas A&M?
No surprise what the play of the game is, Coach, presented by CB&S Bank.
Well, they scored a touchdown earlier on the same formation, and we were actually trapping the flat and playing everybody inside out. So this number 3 receiver did that. All right, so, and that's actually what we wanted to play if it was a 2-point play, which this situation is the same as a 2-point play. Except because they had done that, we wanted to change the leverage on everybody. So we're playing outside technique. This guy's a rat. All right, Henry and 2 are reading the back. If the back goes out, 2 will cover him. If the back stays in, Henry will cover him and green dog him, and 2 will double number 1, who's where they threw the ball. And Terrion's really pushing the guys outside, which has helped squeezes them off because he knows he's getting help from 10 or 2. And then, we were afraid of the quarterback, possibly running the ball. All right, so we dabbed the front. All right, so we're going to take Will and take him off the edge. These guys are going to break the pocket, and 15 is going to pop out and mirror the quarterback. So we're trying to cover all the bases, obviously, on this play, and you can see how it came out. Terrion, you can see how he's playing outside technique on the guy, so when the guy worked back, he had a chance to make the play. You see how 2 is doubling out to him. You see how Henry's green dog in the back because the back didn't fast release. If the back fast release, 2's covering them. And everybody down here is playing outside technique with 9 being the rat on this side, to cut everybody on the inside route. So had pretty good coverage on the play, and the player made a really good play.
There's Saban with detailing the play of the game through Alabama Athletics there on his coach's show.
The part that he doesn't go into there is what a crap call it was by Arkansas.
Well, I love how he's goes into everything, and then at the end, without him saying it, he's thinking, but they didn't do any of these things. So Henry, he's talking about Henry To'o. Henry got to stay home right here, and the back just really doesn't release, so he gets to stay home, and then they go over here, and Terrion's already an outside technique. Ball's thrown to the outside, so he makes a good
short
play
of the end zone.
Yeah, that was not the best play call from Jimbo Fisher.
Brooke Kromer joins us from the Draft Network. Brooke was in Tuscaloosa Saturday, I believe. Is that right, Brooke?
Yeah, y'all are crushing my heart. As you can see, I am an Aggie, and that game hurt. And that hurts.
That play call, what are they doing?
Look, I mean, I don't know if A-Chain was running the ball that well anyway, so it's do you want to put it in his hands? It's what do? We got a backup quarterback in. It was destined to happen. We weren't going to win that game. I mean, there was no way.
Oh, but the whole the whole small field area, it was awful.
Do you allow yourself, Brooke, at some point to think, because I did on that final drive, I'm thinking, man, A&M just has Bama's number.
They're going to do it again.
This is going to happen again because I'm watching Haynes King. The guy looks like Daniel LaRusso at the end of Karate Kid, limping around the field, and he's throwing these weird baseball-like tosses out to people. It's caught, and I'm thinking, they're going to pull this off again like they did with Zach Calzada a year ago. Did you allow your mind to go there at any point that it might actually happen?
I did. I was sitting in the A&M section, the rah-rah around you. You're getting excited, and there was a moment we thought it could happen. There was something deep down that we knew it probably wasn't going to. It's Alabama. It's Nick Saban. A couple of times that I thought maybe the refs were getting a little extra money in their pocket when they were going over to the review booth. But, just the name of the game when you're playing Alabama.
So, Brooke, speaking of Nick Saban, his NFL experiment was not great with the Dolphins.
Less than that.
And you had a tweet earlier today about Matt Rhule's NFL experiment not going great. Some similarities, not as outwardly as Urban Meyer in Jacksonville, but this seems to be kind of a recurring theme for successful college coaches taking the next step to the NFL. What are you hearing on Matt Rhule in Carolina?
I mean, the guy drew my final straw last year when he fired Joe Brady as, in my eyes, a scapegoat trying to save his job. Now we got him in Buffalo. I'm a Bills fan, so I can't complain one bit about it. But I did have a couple of friends, including Joe Brady, on the staff in Panthers last year, none this season. So not sure what's going on there this season, but I can't imagine it's that different. Just culture issues is what I heard. Horrendous. Mentioned multiple times they couldn't see him winning any games with how terrible the work environment was. It just was a lack of responsibility, a lack of accountability. One of my friends there had said that he never heard him once, Matt Rhule, take responsibility saying, hey, this game's on me. Like you see most good leaders and good head coaches do say, hey, this game was on me, bad play call, bad whatever. No, he was spreading out the blame to other coaches, to other players, whoever it was. Just not a good culture. And as I'm sure you guys know, in coaching, chemistry is everything. If you have good chemistry on a coaching staff, you're going to get through some really tough times together, and you're probably going to be able to get to the playoffs, if not get to that championship game. And you see that time and time again. Most of the teams that do get there have great chemistry. All the coaches can trust each other. And once that starts losing, which it sounds like it was under Matt Rhule there, that it's going downhill from there.
So Brooke, he's out after 5 games, and I'm sure David Tepper doesn't want to pay the buyout if he's going to win, but fires him after 5 games, and he somehow brought him back for this year. He's got the money to pay the buyout if he wanted to. Why did he keep him? And it was the worst kept secret that the hot seat was extremely hot for Rhule anyway. Is it par for the course that you thought that, based on what you know and who the coaches you've talked to, that it could happen this soon?
I mean, this is early. This is early in the season. You'd think they would at least get him to like a third of the season, maybe halfway through the season. But I don't know. I mean, we've seen with this general manager, he likes to make decisions quick. And once he makes them, I think he's got his mindset. I don't think he can see past it. So I'm not that surprised. I don't think anyone really wanted to be there. I know one of my friends was hoping that he could just go with Joe Brady. Like, hey, can you just pay me? Just let me go. But, you can't quit and then still get paid. So it's not happening. You're just going to have to fire through some things. But yeah, I'm honestly not that surprised. I kind of saw it coming last year. I thought it would happen in the off season. It didn't. So kind of figured it was coming at some point during the season.
Defensive coordinator Phil Snow also out. What do you read into that? What was his relationship with the head coach like, and what's the shift now with Wilkes up to the rest of the staff?
Yeah, Phil Snow, Ed Foley, both out with Matt Rhule. They both came with him from Baylor, so it's not too surprising. They probably all, work together. They're a team. A lot of coaches will bring, their guys from past teams or who they like to work with, and they probably all have the same coaching mindset and the same way that they do things. So I'm not too surprised that they're all gone at the same time, but that's a lot of coaching positions to now have to fill when, the coaches are already have so much on their plate to get through a week. So now these coaches are going to have to take on all of the extra. Steve Wilkes, he's going to be taking on so much. Al Holcomb's going to be taking on the defensive coordinator position, I'm pretty sure, is what I've seen today. So it's going to be a lot for this team to come together and win some football games. But I think we're going to struggle a little bit, but hopefully at least find some things that are working, that are clicking, so that next season or going into the off season, if they do want to keep Steve Wilkes as their head coach, that he has something to play off of going into next season for success.
Well, Tepper did say today that they will give him the first crack at earning the job. It's going to be difficult if they go through a fire sale here with DJ Moore on the trade block. There was a report out from the ABC affiliate in Buffalo with your Bills that said that they called about McCaffrey. I wonder how many vets are actually on the trade block for a Carolina team that is no doubt trying to get as many draft picks as possible if they're going to completely tear it down and rebuild.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see Christian McCaffrey, if you lose him, how do you fill that role? And then, the quarterback position has already been so crazy. We just found out today that Baker Mayfield's going to be out a couple of weeks as well. So they're going down quick if they lose DJ Moore as well. What do we have left here? So it's gonna be tough. I think that the Panthers are gonna have a lot to fight through, a lot of adversity coming up. But it's gonna be interesting to see if Christian McCaffrey actually comes to my Bills.
As an A&M fan, are you more or less concerned with Auburn if they hire Matt Rhule as their next coach?
Matt Rhule is a good college coach. He showed that he could do it at Temple. He showed he could do it at Baylor. He could go and have success in college. College and NFL coaching are so different. You have a limited amount of hours with these players in college. every single week because they have classes, they have everything else going on. You got to deal with recruiting, you got to deal with the boosters. It's a completely different game. The NFL is so much faster, third downs, red zones, everything is just completely different. So, I mean, you could have complete success in college football and not have it in the NFL, as we saw, and he could go back to the college game and do really well. So, yeah, I'm a little concerned if he comes back to the SEC. That could be not so great for my Aggies.
Well, Chad, the idea, Matt Rhule is going to be able to name his price moving forward. It may not be his price, but his coaching staff's going to get paid one way or the other.
Yeah, we brought this up earlier, Brooke, with the $42 million he's owed by the Panthers. And it's going to be the offset salary that he makes as a college coach, let's say. He could theoretically take a job for $500,000 a year and then allocate a lot of money to his staff and have the Panthers pick up the rest of the money that he wants to make as a head coach and just build a dominant staff, the highest paid in college football. He could do that at Nebraska, Wisconsin, Auburn. You name one of these programs that's open. What do you think about the possibility of that happening? But what you're saying about Matt Rhule, from what you hear from coaches that work for him, he doesn't necessarily sound like the guy who's going to do that for his staff. Or am I wrong?
You know, I'm not really sure. You might want to call him and have that conversation and just give him that idea in case he's not already thinking about it, because that is a very great idea. But then what culture does he bring there and into that coaching staff? And does he do that, allow that? But not a bad play if you can just keep taking from the Carolina Panthers. I mean, I'm sure he's not happy with them anyways. Sounded like they ended on good terms, but I'd still be taking that big old paycheck from him. And I mean, if you want to win a championship, you got to do what you got to do. I could see it happening.
Brooke Kromer has been our guest. The Draft Network is where you can find her work as well as on social media at Brooke Kromer. Brooke, thank you for the time this afternoon. Let's catch up soon. And thanks for joining us on short notice with the news coming down about Rhule.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is such a ball. Thank you.
All right, there's Brooke Kromer. Speaking of the topic there, Paul, on college coaches, NFL coaches, and the jump between the two, you have a stat?
Yeah, this is per The Athletic. Since 2010, there have been 8 first-time NFL head coaches who were hired directly from the college ranks. Collective winning percentage, .430 at their initial stop. 4 of the 8 never reached the playoffs. 5 were either fired or stepped down within their first 3 seasons. And that winning percentage is really anchored by Jim Harbaugh and Bill O'Brien. The list: Harbaugh, Schiano, Marrone, Chip Kelly, Bill O'Brien, Cliff Kingsbury, Matt Rhule, and Urban Meyer.
Pete Carroll, having coached in the NFL before going to USC, also hurts that, having had success at USC, then going back because he's been successful. I'd also like to see the reverse stat because, well, Brooke's right, and we know this, but it's different games completely. Herm Edwards did not have success when he goes to college football.
Yeah.
There's plenty of examples of the reverse being true also. Guys in the NFL that go down to college and then suddenly they don't like the grind of dealing with boosters, dealing with recruiting.
Parents.
Dealing with an NCAA rule book all of a sudden.
Right. I'd prefer the NFL less money for the NFL less work. I mean, I think the NFL offseason is seems glorious to me. There is an offseason.
Yeah,
it's a grind.
The workload,
but there's an end.
The workload is totally different.
You can play golf. You can go and see your kids play ball. You can spend time with your wife.
In the Power 5, not all, but most Power 5 jobs, within 4 years, you're going to be paid to fail. The type of buyout money that Rhule's getting is because Tepper was willing to give him a college head coaching contract.
Which caused a furor amongst his fellow 3130 owners, not Green Bay.
Was that the same year or a year before Gruden took the Vegas job?
No, I think it was
in
before.
Oakland.
I think it was before.
I mean, it's all about what you want, because if you're okay with the workload, I mean, you are an emperor on a college program. You get all the say.
You're the GM. The
you
head
are
coach,
yes. There's not a lot of checks and balances for top level jobs. You dictate the direction of everything with your program, from uniforms to marketing to talent acquisition to hiring. I mean, everything is done by
Too
you.
much.
It's a powerful thing.
Too much.
It's a power thing for a lot of guys, though.
There's a lot of power. I mean,
I'm like
if you're
you, I would
Belichickian, there's a lot of power and plenty of time off.
Yes, but there's one Bill Belichick.
Yeah.
There's 60 of them in college football that have all that power and are making a ton of money. I'm like you. I would take the less money for just football only.
But even if you're Dan Campbell right now, I mean, he's got a hell of a lot of power. He's got a city behind him, and they're crappy. But he's selling hope. Those first couple of years, you get to sell hope, and you get to see your wife.
They have a GM, though, right?
Yeah.
He's not drafting players.
No, but that's a good thing, kind of.
Again, it's about what you want.
Yeah.
If it's
you
the
get
power,
to split the responsibility.
if it's all the power you seek, if it's emperor status, you will take more money and a bigger workload and a lot more stress at times throughout the year to be a college coach. And if you want to be all about football and coaching football, the NFL's the way to go. I would side with the NFL head coaching job as a much less stressful position because I'm not, you know why? I'm not having to look at my Insta DMs to see if the defensive back from Plano, Texas got back to me so I can respond to help in recruiting at all times. It's
or
just
the
different.
Defensive back at Western Kentucky.
Yes, name the school they could be transferring from.
Yeah.
There's always something. Just think of a big game weekend for a college coach. You are going from recruiting functions on Friday and Saturday morning to meeting with your team at the hotel to then going and meeting with recruits again in your office to then getting your team ready on the field, coaching on national TV in front of all these people and all these fans. Then you're going right into a dinner with recruits right after. You're not even decompressing, win or lose, whatever happens. It's nonstop.
Too much.
Nonstop.
Well, and then you're also, but you have less of a workload, but not a high success rate of the guys that make that jump because you're not in full control of your personnel. You're not winning a one-on-one battle in a recruiting stop, right? You're not jumping a flight where free agency's open every year and there is no salary cap, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think a lot of the guys come in and don't really have a way to get a spark going until the following off season, and then by then you're a third of the way into a prove-it contract. You're kind of screwed at that point. Especially if you got to wait to draft your quarterback after you get there. If you got to wait a year,
well, sometimes that buys you time.
It can, but not if
depends on your owner.
Yeah, and it depends on
and what you inherit.
I saw Mike Leach.
It depends on who's available too. I mean,
Mike Leach
if you need a quarterback this year, you're screwed in the draft.
Unless your team's top 3.
Mike Leach had a quote where he said, "Let's just make it." He said, "Let's make it pro sports." He said, "It's already pro sports in college. Let's draft the players, and let's have talent acquisition that way and see who does better." Now, that would benefit Mike Leach at Mississippi State. Because how many recruits are they going to win from Alabama?
How's the Supreme Court going to feel about that?
Well,
or the federal government?
If they're getting paid. The point is, you're drafting someone. It doesn't work because it's still supposed to be a college. I can't draft you and make you go to my college because you're a good football player. It's like a military draft at that point.
Tom Pelissero on the Panthers report from Buffalo, it's an ABC affiliate in Buffalo, saying that the Bills have contacted the Panthers about Christian McCaffrey. Pelissero saying that the Panthers have not had trade talks about Christian McCaffrey with the Bills or any other team this season per sources. And that he points out that Carolina's already paid most of all of his $8.6 million salary in a bonus. And so you're not like trading salary, but you could trade picks. Pelissero's also not saying that the Bills didn't call.
Yes.
There's just not trade talks like actually, they're not negotiating currently.
Yeah, anyone could call
not saying
about
the Bills
any
are
player.
not.
November 1st is the trade deadline. So
the Titans should call the Bills about Stephon Diggs. I'd like to see that report. Hey, they called. There's been no official trade talks yet, but we do have a report that they called. Pick up the phone and call.
Get ready for what's going to be a fun Monday Night Football game between the Chiefs and the Raiders. We'll preview that, give you our picks, and look ahead to more news that will be coming down the pike over the next 24 hours or so for tomorrow's show. That's next on OutKick 360. What's up? It's Hutton, OutKick 360. It is time for the 360 3 in 60.
All right, first question. Why are you a better team player than Clay Travis when it comes to the OutKick Fantasy League?
Because I actually follow through on the punishment. D-back. Play D-back.
And if you owned an NFL team totally brand new, you had to name it, pick the colors, the mascot, what are you picking?
The Alphas. That's the name of my team. And I'm moving to either Vegas or LA for a third team in LA or a second team in Vegas because everyone wants to go out west amongst the NFL owners.
F, marry, kill, breakfast, lunch, or dinner?
I am killing breakfast because I don't eat breakfast. I am marrying lunch and effing dinner for sure. I can carry over with 1 meal per day if I had to. Absolutely no breakfast for me.
Hey, listen, if you missed my show, don't at me. I've got you covered. Take a look.
It is the first time Tennessee and Alabama will play as undefeated teams since 1989. So it's a pretty big Saturday in Knoxville. And, ever since Nick Saban got to Bama, Tennessee has not won in this series. I was actually at the last game Tennessee won over Alabama in 2006, which was a pretty low-scoring affair. I don't think this one's going to be low-scoring with Tennessee's offense and with Bryce Young likely back for Alabama. But it sets up what is a monumental weekend in Knoxville, and it really did come out of nowhere. I tweeted this over the weekend, and you watch what Josh Heupel did. For the lack of enthusiasm about that hire, when he was hired, people wanted a bigger name. People wanted Lane Kiffin to come back. Tennessee fans wanted someone they'd heard of. Mike Gundy was one that was thrown around. But when Danny White brought in the guy he hired at UCF, there weren't a lot of people excited about it. And here we are 18 months later, and I think you could put Josh Heupel right up there with one of the best coaching jobs I've ever seen in terms of a quick turnaround and what he inherited.
I think sometimes people see a strike, and particularly in the NFL, because you just want football, right? But they don't know long-term what came out of that strike, Randy. I certainly didn't until you started telling me about it.
Yeah. Well, and the thing it's different about sports strikes, especially football strikes, and now there's partnership between the union and the league. That's why these deals never get too acrimonious, and they usually make a deal because it's not as contentious. At one time, it was very contentious, and you just history fades, years fade, and facts kind of fade at times when it comes to that.
9 to 11 Eastern time at OutKick.com.
Never miss an episode by checking out OutKick.com, but in case you did miss an episode, I've got you covered. So the Democrats and the thinly veiled Democrats of the mainstream media have spent all week trying to blame Hurricane Ian on Ron DeSantis. They, with the help of the green hairs who program the Twitter algorithms, have made idiotic hashtags such as Death Santis Trend. Now, they've tried to red herring, straw man, and a-hole the man into the ground with every interview, every mention, every headline, but much to their dismay, it has not worked. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is too smart for these low-level vultures, and he's come out of this natural disaster looking like the leader he's been since elected into office. And it's not just we Republicans that see it either, and this may be the best video I've seen all week.
About DeSantis, but that gas is here in Arcadia. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but it's here in Arcadia, so y'all know who we vote for. I don't know about the rest of you motherfuckers vote for DeSantis.
What do you think the goal of the Democrats are when they are the lawlessness, the DAs, the activist DAs with the no cash bail, letting people out back onto the streets to reoffend, essentially neutering communities through gun control? What is, in your opinion, the motivation or the ultimate goal behind that?
Some of these entities and energies just want this place to burn. Now, this does not mean where we got to take stock in self. Some of these people from outside do not like the fact that Democratic leadership has involved us in their nations where we should not be. That's a bit different, but that's a threat too. But as far as Democratic politicians in America, they are taking bags of money from the Soros types. They are the collaborators with the Decepticons.
Tune in every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on all of our social media platforms and on OutKick.com as I break down all the hot topics and, of course, give you my final thoughts.
Chiefs hosting the Raiders tonight on Monday Night Football. OutKick 360 rolls on. So Troy Aikman threw for 165 touchdowns in his entire career. And Mahomes can tie him tonight with 3 touchdown passes for 165, and he will do that if he does it tonight. Aikman will be on the call. He will do it in 100 fewer games. And he has a chance to do it this evening. So if you want to bet a certain aspect of this, outkick.com/bet, I would say that the stat itself kind of feeds in and leans into over-under touchdown passes for Patrick Mahomes here. I would also say take the over 72.5 yards receiving for Travis Kelce. He's had at least 100 yards or more each of the last 4 times he's faced the Raiders.
I'll take a 30-point night from Kelce. That's all I need.
That's what I hope. Okay.
That's
and a 0-point night from Waller.
It's a great stat about the 100-yard receiving games from Kelce.
3 of the last 4. I said all 4. 3 of the last 4.
So much so that I'm going to place that action right now at DraftKings.
72.5. Again, you can go to outkick.com/bet is where you can get all of the action on Monday night.
Hey, how about this stat from college football?
Yes.
This from our buddy Bruce Feldman at Fox Sports. Tennessee ranks number 1 in the country in offense. In 2020, the year before Josh Heupel took over, the Vols ranked 102nd in offense just 2 years ago.
It's a small
it's a big increase in a short amount of time.
Very impressive.
With not a ton of turnover personnel-wise, in that short of amount of time. Guys that were the 102nd offense, now the first offense.
I like that he's a likable guy because you know how easy it would be for me to try to punch holes in it. But he's a likable guy, and he's done great work.
It's hard to punch holes in anything, even for a guy you don't like, with the results they're doing a year and a half in, especially when you've got Jimbo Fisher and Brian Kelly having people make excuses for them. I've never heard Josh Heupel make one excuse on what he inherited. So
he's done terrific work, and I would love to see it extend into Saturday.
It is tough to.
Oh, what a ripple effect that could have.
It is tough to even state just the remarkable quick turnaround, just based on what he inherited and where Tennessee was perception-wise. I mean, NCAA investigation, almost 40 guys leaving the program. It looked like a dumpster fire that he took over, and they had a really good first year, and they're having a terrific second season. It's been incredible to watch. I saw Pete Sampson, who covers Notre Dame, also say that was the worst home loss in the history of Brian Kelly as a Division I coach on Saturday at home for LSU against Tennessee. But he said it's really hard to find Grand Valley State statistics, but he was going through Grand Valley State records to see if he had a worse loss as a coach, even at a different level as a head coach.
Big part of that makes me, the style of play is obviously a big part of it. So if you're taking over a program with history, or any program, Power 5 program, makes me wonder, should you just bring a new style of play, a different style of play? If you're a good enough coach that can do that, is that a path to, if you can get the kids to do it, is that a path to getting better faster?
Usually it's a path for failure because you're inheriting something that they do this one thing and they have the personnel fit for that. And now when I try to do something totally different, it's going to be even worse than what they were doing before. So it's a very unique set of circumstances at Tennessee.
I'd certainly look at what they've done.
Speaking of not likable, Brian Kelly, put him on the list of coaches who are not very likable when you see his sideline demeanor and his post-game demeanor.
I like the fact that he doesn't try to hide it, at least.
Who do you guys have tonight?
I think Kansas City will win by 10.
Hang on. You're saying a good thing Josh Heupel's a nice guy because I could punch holes in this. But Brian Kelly, who is a,
I like that he embraces
it. I'm just saying, at least he doesn't hide it.
I'm saying he's not a phony about it.
He's not a phony. He had a fake Southern accent. He said,
I just feel like
family.
No, that was phony. Don't get me wrong. That was phony. But I think Brian Kelly being unlikable, he's not phony about it. He's just flat out unlikable.
It's just who he is.
I think Kansas City wins by 10 tonight.
I think my family's going to watch Kansas City win big tonight.
I also like the over tonight because Kansas City's defense allows 24 on average to begin. I think it's going to be a fun game on Monday night. We'll recap it tomorrow. John McClain and much more on OutKick 360.
Don't block that box, but please lock your locks.